Hey, yo, Playboy. This is Nick Rolfe. You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Come here and smell my dreadlocks.
Yeah, that's right. That's our man.
That had to be Billy Cho.
Oh,
That had to
yes, it was Mr. Billy Cho, friend of the show, and obviously friend of our guests. Giving us the intro for Mark.
I'm gonna rethink this friendship.
Exactly. How do I unplug this microphone right now?
That was awesome.
So, welcome to Mark of the Maker. This is episode 31. That's our friend Billy Cho picking on our guest this week, Mr. Nick Rolfe. We'll get to Nick here and say hello in just a second. Let's make sure we got everybody here. Mr. Tom Krein, are you with us?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. And we have Mr. Michael Birch.
Here. And of course, we'll hear Nick's impersonation of Billy Cho later.
Maybe, yeah. And we have Mr. Sean Kendrick.
Here I am, rock you like a hurricane.
Woo!
Scorpions.
I like that.
Totally.
Yeah. And as you heard already, joining us for episode 31 of Mark of the Maker is our friend and friend of the show, Mr. Nick Rolfe.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for having me, fellas.
Glad you're here.
Our pleasure, bud.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So we've done some other collector interviews already, and Nick is kind of our latest installation in a collector interview. Nick has a very interesting story, both personal story, kind of what he's into as far as knives, kind of a grand tour he took getting to where he is relative to knives and how he uses them. And just a cool guy and friend of ours that we thought you all might like hearing from. So we'll have a good conversation and see where it all goes.
Yes, indeed.
Got that smooth voice.
He does. He gave us some intros on the show earlier on, so Nick's voice should sound familiar to folks who've listened to the show for a while.
A lot of people tell me I sound like Michael Birch, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah. Pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to
said no one ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Practically the same.
Almost the same.
All right. So what we usually do with guests is kind of help teach the listener who our guest is. So Nick, you want to kick us off on kind of where you grew up and how you came through life to get to where you are today. It's kind of a long path, but let's get started.
So I was raised in Seattle, Washington, in the great Pacific Northwest. And my father was an avid outdoorsman and kind of a former jock. And he actually moved us across the country because he got tapped to be the lead, well, I guess the director, kind of the first director of the Pike Place Public Market, the famous I guess the Pike Place Public Market. That's a tongue twister to say that.
That's very cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was in bad shape. There were a lot of homeless people in downtown Seattle, and my father's background was in architecture and urban planning. So he had some really good ideas for low-income housing and how to make the grounds of the public market accessible for pedestrians, and really kind of was responsible for turning that place around and turning it into one of Seattle's great landmarks, along with the Space Needle.
Huh. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you say avid outdoorsman, your father was like a camping bushcraft guy or a hunting guy or all of the above?
He was not, he didn't hunt. He was big into backpacking and hiking. He was big into, he was a sailor. We did a lot of long extended trips on a sailboat. He was big into that. He took us up. He was a big skier. He took us from a very young age. I learned how to ski when I was maybe 6 years old.
Wow.
We always took long backpacking trips, camping. He was into all that. Wasn't a hunter. Wasn't a big gun guy. He was in the military, but he wasn't a big gun guy. We shot rifles and stuff like in summer camp and Boy Scouts and stuff like that. But and that's the extent of his outdoorsman experience. He really passed a lot of that on to us and really kind of sparked that that passion in me. So I definitely appreciate that.
Did he do any fishing?
Yeah, we did a lot of fishing. We'd get up at 4:00 in the morning and go out in the Puget Sound and try to fish, try to catch some king salmon. That didn't always work out so well, but we came back with a few sometimes.
And when you say skiing, are you doing downhill or cross country?
We did a little bit of both. I learned how to downhill first, and I got really heavily into it. So I started as an alpine racer and specialized in slalom and giant slalom, a little bit of downhill, and then when I got older, moved into freestyle and competed as a mogul specialist and actually pursued it pretty far into a
Wow.
junior national level. So that's kind of further down in the timeline. Yeah.
Pretty epic.
Was that
Yeah.
like in the 80s type of situation?
Yep.
Because I imagine that outfit was badass.
Hey, man, neon was the hotness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can
The
just
brighter
picture
the
it
better.
now.
The brighter the better.
There you go.
So what kind of did your dad ever, I mean, he had to have a knife with him. Do you remember what knife he carried with him, or did he have a special one or anything like that?
You know, he was, believe it or not, he wasn't a big knife guy. He had a kind of what got me intrigued by knives in the first place was he had a shop down in the basement. So he had he made furniture and stuff like that. He was kind of an all around craftsman guy in the shop. He'd always do projects. He'd always have a project going, and he always had like little case knives and little Swiss Army knives, and I was always intrigued by those. And so I talked about it enough that when I got a certain achievement in I think, was it Cub Scouts or Weeblos? Maybe Weeblos. He got me my first Swiss Army knife, which I still have.
Nice.
Awesome.
And then from there, I got my next one was a Buck 110, which I still have.
Great knife. Great selection.
Nice
Yeah,
progression.
yeah.
too.
So
Yeah.
yeah. I was only allowed, they had to stay in the shop. And the only time I could actually carry him around was when we were up in the mountains or if I was doing a scouting event or something like that. But besides that, they had to stay in the cabinet, one of the cabinets down in the shop. That was my mom's rule. She didn't want us carrying around packing blades.
Right.
No.
Did you listen to our conversation with David Sharp? His mom was definitely not about the knives either. It was
Actually, I
funny.
think I did hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's. I thought about this when you asked me about coming on and doing this podcast, and I thought, what was my first? I can't remember. Yeah, I really think it's my dad's shop and just the tools he had down there, and I always wanted to mess with the knives, and so he said, when I earn it, I can get one. So that was the deal. That was everything with him. You earn it, you can get it. So
Yeah.
Good lesson.
So that was his. That was how he rolled. Interestingly enough, though the first knives that I had were, a multi-bladed Swiss Army knife or the Buck 110, fixed blades were the thing that was what I was all about. And I think in my heart, I'm still a fixed blade guy now. I love folders. I love knives in general, but fixed blades are really that's kind of what I've been into since I was little and what I'm still into now.
I think I love you a little more now. Just
we can talk a little bit offline.
Just when he thought it was impossible, baby.
That's right.
Oh, looking for love.
In all the right places.
Was some of that fixed blade love based off of like some of our similar situations of watching these movies as a kid? Did that have any influence?
All day. Rambo and Cobra. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Those big old blades. And even before that, though, I mean, if you think about, I used to love watching all those Westerns back in the day. So what did the cowboys always have? They always had a rifle. They always had a pistol, and they always had a big old stag-handled something,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, it looked like they could do everything.
unless you're the bounty hunter, you had a lever action, right? Only?
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
Like a mare's leg?
Yeah,
You talking
I
like
love-
Wanted Dead or Alive?
Dude. Yeah, that was awesome.
Oh, hell yeah, it
Mare's
was.
leg.
Well, now, number one, that's Steve McQueen. And Steve McQueen makes
Yeah.
that gun so much
Yeah.
fucking cooler than it is.
I want to buy one of the Henry ones, but I'm like, I haven't made myself do it yet.
Didn't
Yeah, me too.
Mossberg make a mare's leg shotgun or something? I thought somebody did. I was just kind of like, yeah.
Henry makes
right.
a a pistol caliber one.
Yeah, they make a few 44 and 38.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pistol caliber lever is where it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah. Man, 1894 for real.
You know what? Not for me. Not for me, man. I want to go ahead and just get a big bore, just because.
Yeah.
Yeah. 4570 all day, baby.
Yeah.
Dude,
Now
if
you're
going to
talking.
4570. You got to roll your own.
40.
I've got two
I don't need any more
4570s,
hobbies.
and I load my own.
Yeah, I don't need any more hobbies. I could tell. Starting to press my own. That's gonna be a bad day.
Those things hurt,
Yeah.
man. I ain't going to lie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you load them
Yeah.
right, they hurt bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In a Marlin, you can load it up just under a 458 Winchester, and they are
Jesus.
brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thumper.
I thought I'd
Crazy,
load a
man.
bunch up like that. Took it out, shot 2 shots, and I was done. My kid shot the rest of them.
My dad got one in the
Nothing
test.
like a night.
He had my cousin and I. He's like, "You need to sight this in for us." And we're like, "All right." Now I know why he had
Off
us
a
do it.
bench.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brutal.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nick, you're a musician by trade, right? Have you been a musician since you were young? Did you start playing music as a young boy?
Yeah. I started piano lessons, I think, first grade, and basically
Yeah.
played kind of pop and classical music all the way up until, I guess, sophomore year in high school. Sports was a big thing in our family, and so as I got older and got more and more and more involved in all different kinds of sports, first of all, piano wasn't really cool. I was kind of embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
When I was a little dude, I was kind of popular in school because I could play like the theme song to Hill Street Blues or something like that. So so that was cool. But when I got a little bit older, and then it's kind of chasing girls and playing sports, piano was not at the top of the list. So I was allowed to stop playing my sophomore year in high school, and I just kind of focused on being a teenager, and eventually came back around to it. It never really left. It was always in my mind. I always thought about it, and I'd always sit down and play a little bit and think, I should get back into this.
Yeah.
But I kind of went on a little bit of a different trajectory when I got out of school. I wasn't a good enough athlete to jump right off into like playing collegiate level sports. I was a fairly physically gifted athlete, but the mental side of it was what I really needed work on. And to me, that's what separates athletes into elite athletes, is being able to master the mind,
Right.
And my strongest team sport was soccer. I played varsity all the way through high school, but I didn't have a future in it. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
And so I decided that I wanted to be a firefighter. And after I got out of high school, I worked construction just to make money. Excuse me, my voice is a little bit tired, so this might happen throughout the episode. Let me just catch a drink real quick.
No problem.
I worked construction growing up, so it's hard work.
Yeah, it's hard work. It's hard work. I
Dude.
mean, I was
And
making
it's hot
good
in the
money.
summer and cold in the winter.
Yes, sir. Hard work. But I was trying to test into the Seattle Fire Department, and they were hiring like 1 or 2 people a year out of over 1,000 applicants.
Oh,
And so I did.
wow.
I tried for Redmond. I tried for Redmond, Bellevue, Seattle. The closest I got was the number 2 alternate, and it got kind of frustrating, and in that time, I had a buddy who said, "Oh yeah, I want to try to be a firefighter too," and he took the test and got hired right off the bat. First time he took the test, and he was older than me at the time. He was like 30, a bartender,
Wow.
and he was like, "Oh yeah, let me go. I want to do that." And he got hired right off the bat, and he just aced the written, which was the thing. That's what really kind of separated people, was the written test. Everybody could be a physical beast and get through all that stuff. And I actually set the record one of the years I tried for the tower run with the rope. I mean, with the hose, lugging it up the 7-flight tower. But this guy Steve, man, came in and got hired his first time out the box. So I was like, wow, okay,
All right.
maybe I need to
Question.
look at something else. Yeah.
Did you keep referring to it as the rope in the test?
Yeah, that sounded really official, right? Yeah, let me drag that. Like, you want me to carry that rope?
May have found the problem.
Right. Right. But yeah, in that time, I started, leaning back towards music. I actually, at that time, I was bouncing around renting different apartments, and I found a place that had a grand piano in it, an old Chickering grand piano, which is a really beautiful piano. And I was gonna move there with one of my buddies, and he wasn't ready to move out of his girlfriend's spot yet, so we had to wait a month. And I was like, come on, man, this place isn't gonna be there in a month. Someone's gonna come snatch it. But it was still available a month later when he was ready, and was kind of an interesting, it kind of fired me back up to be able to sit down and play the piano again. And I started studying with a jazz teacher, and about 6 months later, I applied at Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle, which is kind of the premier performing arts college there. And I got accepted,
Nice.
and that's kind of what started me off on the trajectory of my career.
Very cool.
What age were you at this point?
Let's see. I was 22.
Okay.
I was 22. So I did 2 years at Cornish, and I really kind of jumped in full speed. I mean, I jumped in heavy. I was practicing like 8 hours every day, and that's around going to school. So I was just kind of obsessed, which tends to be, it's kind of how I roll a little bit. If I really get excited about things, I tend to jump in, full in. So after 2 years, I felt like I just needed more. I was trying to go play around town in Seattle, and a lot of places were like, well, we don't know you. Who are you? Why would we have you play here? And, which is fine. That's the way it goes. But I was a hungry young dude, you know what I mean? So I said, well,
Right.
Seattle is too small for me. That was my attitude. If you don't want me here, and quite honestly, I wasn't ready. I mean, but I thought I was. So I applied to a bunch of the big schools in New York, and I got accepted to a few. And I chose the new school, Manus College of Music, because it was right down in the West Village. So, and from all the history of jazz musicians and all that, everybody knew about the Village. That was the spot.
Yeah, it's a place to be.
Yeah. So, and the fact that it was the jazz division of Manus Conservatory, it was like, okay, this is going to be good on a lot of different levels. So, I moved to New York, and in '95, I moved to New York and stayed there basically full time. I kind of went back and forth for the first few years. Stayed there until, jumping forward to 2016, moved back over to the Pacific Northwest. But once I got to New York, I again jumped in, full board, jumped in, without even looking back. And it was a great period. It was a great period of my life.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that that you didn't start your college level music stuff until you had been around the block a time or two, right? I mean, it's not like you went straight out of high school. You kind of pursued this other path and then went after music. Do you think when you first said that, I'm like, oh, okay, good. Sometimes you got to kind of blow the cobwebs out, right? Figure out what you want to do, and then you dive in.
Totally.
Is that kind of the way it was with you with this whole thing? Yeah,
and it, by no means was it on purpose. I'd like to say that I was that smart and savvy, but I just was.
Right.
School was a little bit of a struggle for me. Not because I was a smart kid, but I didn't have the drive to focus myself and focus. I was interested in a ton of different things, and I really just wanted to get done with school. So when I graduated from high school, the last thing I wanted to do was go to college.
Right.
One of the sports that I got into that I really kind of fell in love with as a teenager was amateur boxing. And so when I got out of high school, I thought that, oh, maybe this is something that I want to do. You know, I was pretty good. I wasn't a phenom or anything, but my amateur record, I had 25 fights and lost one. And the one that I lost because, quite honestly, I was not in shape and I gave up.
Yeah.
And that I learned so much from that fight. First of all, the way that everybody looked at me, I was like, man, I mean, people were looking at me like I was just a piece of shit, you know, but I learned from that, you know, and I never forgot that feeling, you know, the way my coach looked at me, the way my opponent's coach looked at me, I was like, wow, okay. So that's what it feels like to be a quitter.
Yeah.
And man, that sticks with me to this day because I could have beat this kid. I didn't, anyone who's done amateur boxing, you know, they have the smoker events, over the weekend. So you go down and you go down Friday night and you weigh in Friday night, you fight Saturday, and then you go on and finish on Sunday. And sometimes you get a bye, on just, you know, it just depends on how many fighters are there. So I got a bye on Saturday. And instead of hydrating myself and eating right, doing all the things you know you're supposed to do, I didn't do. You know, I was what, 18, 19, something like that. So I was just like, oh man, I'm Superman. I don't need to do all that. I'll just knock people out. That's what I was thinking. Man, right. Guess what?
Yeah.
I got in that ring and gassed out in the first round. I was dehydrated. I didn't have the proper nutrition the day before, so my body was done. All that adrenaline and everything, I was done. And I was winning the first round, but I barely made it through the first round, came out the second round, and my entire body felt like a lead. And this guy just started thumping me, and he backed me up into the ropes, and I got a standing 8 count, and I pretended like I didn't hear the ref. I pretended like I didn't hear him count to 8. And I just pretended like I didn't hear it and then tried to act like I was surprised, you know?
Right.
And so I got stopped on a technical. I looked up when he said 8 and acted like I was still trying to catch my breath.
Right.
Man, that was a tough one. That was, and I knew I gave up. I knew I quit. And like I said, it that stuck with me to this day.
Tough.
Yeah.
So, it was a hard lesson, but I didn't lose another fight, I'll tell you that. And I learned the importance of paying attention to my coaches, paying attention to, if they're telling me I need to do something, it's because they know what they're talking about. And
right.
There's a reason that they're coaches. So, so that's a little bit of a tangent, but, you know, I thought I wanted to do that. You know, then, like I said, I started leaning towards, you know, I had some buddies who were firefighters that were a little bit older than me. So I thought, okay, that's what I want to do, because you only work 8 days a month, make
Right.
good money. Wasn't thinking about all the carnage and stuff that those guys see. Wasn't thinking about all this, this, you know, the back injuries and the, you know, the health issues after however many years.
Right.
But
ropes are heavy.
You know, tremendous amount of respect. Ropes, yeah, lugging those water ropes around.
Them water snakes are extra heavy.
Mark, we're gonna have to go back and edit some shit.
Yeah, we're gonna cut some shit out.
Yeah. So
Nick wants to sit with me and do a live edit.
Nick, I've got a question. So you've done some acting work too. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was actually kind of a fluke. I always had, if you ask me when I was like a freshman in high school or maybe a sophomore in high school, I would always tell people I want to be famous. And by me saying that, let me preface that by saying that's not what I'm saying that I am now. I'm saying that that's what I wanted. I felt like I wanted to be like some big superstar or something, but I didn't know what, you know, so people would be like, oh man, you know, what do you want to be? And again, because I was all over the place and I wasn't really focused, like I said before, it's like 8 gazillion things I wanted to do. And one of those things was, oh yeah, I want to be a movie star someday, you know. But
right.
I didn't realize all the work that it takes. I have tremendous amount of respect for people who are professional actors. I have a lot of friends who do that, some at a very high level and some just making a living and some trying to make a living. And that's a tougher job than trying to be a musician. That's tough work. But I was already a pretty established musician at the time, and my manager got a phone call that they were looking for somebody they wanted an actual musician for a role of a musician, and they had gone through like 30 different actors, and it didn't quite feel authentic. And Susan Sarandon happened to be the lead, and I was like, "Oh shit!" So, and Bob Balaban, the actor and director, Robert Balaban was the director for this project, and so I went down and auditioned and really hit it off with Bob right off the bat, and. I had never acted before, but it just felt what he asked me to do. It felt pretty natural. He just Bob is a real, I don't know if you guys are familiar with his work. He's a quirky dude. And the way that he kind of auditioned me was, it was very just kind of organic. It's just more like conversation. He didn't really set up he didn't send me any sides or anything like that and to look at ahead of time. And then he gave me the sides to look at a couple scenes, and we just kind of talked through it. And he said, well, Nick, I like you for this. And he said, I have to ask you, did people wear dreadlocks I'm trying to remember what year this was. This took place, and it was the story of Doris Duke, the tobacco heiress. And I think it was like late 80s into the early 90s.
Yeah.
So he said, did people have dreadlocks? I said, yeah. I mean, it wasn't as prolific as it is now, but yeah, people did. And so he said, okay, well, I'd like you to come back tomorrow and meet Susan and, just see how you guys work together. And I was like, damn, Susan Sarandon. Really? So I came back the next day and met her, and we just hit it off right away. She was just super cool and relaxed, and, I was very comfortable with her. And so we did a couple of scenes. We just did a little improv stuff back and forth. And then we did some of the scenes. And she asked me to play the piano for her. And so we spent maybe a couple hours together. And then they said, okay, well, we'll be in touch. And I had driven into the city for that. And I was on my way back out to New Jersey. And I got a phone call like 45 minutes later saying, we want to offer you the role.
Very
awesome.
I just it was a wild experience.
And that movie was Bernard and Doris, right?
Yeah.
Just so I don't think we mentioned that.
Yeah, and in all honesty, they cut out. I mean, by the time we finished the movie, the entire thing was like 3 hours and 45 minutes, which is obviously way too long.
Right.
And so, the main stars of the show were Susan Sarandon and Ray Fiennes. And so obviously, I was the next billed guy. Oh, and Michael Rebhorn, who passed away a few years ago, he was in it too. But really the story was about the relationship between Doris Duke and her butler, because I don't know if you guys know the story, but he inherited her entire fortune. And the family, I mean, it was a big deal because she didn't will it to her family. And so it was a huge uproar because they thought, well, she must have done something to give this butler, billions of dollars.
Right.
So the movie was Bob's kind of take on their relationship and how it blossomed. So a lot of my stuff got cut out of the movie, and my character didn't really make a lot of sense because they cut out a bunch of the scenes, which I understand why they had to do it. But it kind of makes my role in the movie a little bit like, well, why is what? Because the first time you see the character, I don't want to have anything to do with Ray Fiennes' character, the butler. I'm completely giving him the cold shoulder. And then the next scene we have together, we're sitting at the piano singing and playing and like laughing. So it's like, so what happened? But they cut out a bunch of, but it was still a great experience. Yeah. I mean, and for not having, any experience in acting, it was jumping straight into the fire. I mean, I had love scenes and nude scenes, and I had like everything you could think of except like fight scenes. And I was like, oh shit, like you want me to do what? I don't really know if I'm comfortable with this, but it was fascinating. I'll tell you one thing that was funny is the set would be, we filmed it out in this big old mansion on Long Island, out in New York, and there'd be crew around on set, but when we filmed, usually the set was fairly empty. Man, anytime we had a love scene, all of a sudden there's like 50 motherfuckers in that room. I'm like, who are you? Where did this person come from? Which I thought was funny. It was like clockwork. Anytime there was something kind of salacious, all of a sudden there's like all these people on set. So, but that was a strange experience, but it was great. And from that, I did a couple episodes of Lipstick Jungle. Only one of those I think made it to air. Maybe both did. I played a doorman / bouncer. I did a piano scene on Law and Order.
Awesome.
And then I got an opportunity to get a lead role in a film. Actually, I think this is maybe when me and Michael first started kind of actually communicating in person versus being on the internet. Because I got a man. Really, what I was looking at is the role of a lifetime to be a villain, and it was such a great role. And so, because by this point I was really into knives and stuff, I reached out to a couple makers and was like, "Hey, so let me send you this script. This is I'm playing this villainous dude, this straight evil dude, and this would be a cool way for me to, show off some of you guys' work. I'll pay you for a knife if you guys have time to build something." And so I think Les George and Michael and Alan, I think Martin, Alexi, I think that's who I reached out to at the time. So it was cool. I was excited about that. And then there was some freak, I can't remember what year this was. I want to say maybe 2012. I don't know if you guys remember. Tom, you might remember, because I think it might have been in your neck of the woods. There was a freak tornado storm or something. Like a whole bunch of tornadoes swept through the Midwest.
Oh, that was Oklahoma City.
Bunch of them. Was that where it was?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, something like that. But there was like a whole bunch of really intense tornadoes, and the director, some of his immediate family, like 3 members of his family got killed in these freak.
Jeez.
And so the whole thing, one of the major investors pulled the plug. I mean, the whole thing just fell apart.
Yeah.
And understandably, but it was kind of a tragic series of events that happened that turned into this, not coming to be. And then I went and auditioned for Boardwalk Empire on the HBO.
Yeah.
And they had me on hold for that for a month to play Chalky White, the character that Michael K. Williams got. And oh man, that would have changed my life, because that ended up being a really popular show. Yeah. And they were concerned about my look. They said I was too, what was the word they used? I can't remember. They wanted me to cut my hair, which I said, of course, I'll do that, no problem. Oh, contemporary. That's what they said. They said they felt like my mannerisms were too contemporary. And my agent was like, yeah, but he can act. Like,
it's still acting.
Yeah.
Right.
But they said, well, they called him Marty. So Martin Scorsese's the dude, and they called him Marty. They said, well, Marty's away. He's on vacation in somewhere, and we're going to send him your audition and let him make the decision. And like a month later, my agent just called back and said they're going to go with someone else. And, as disappointing as that was, Michael K. Williams is a beast of an actor. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and I've met him before. And we actually had a conversation. I actually lost another role to another member of that TV show, The Wire. That's how Michael K. Williams kind of came to prominence. So I was like, something about these Wire actors taking on my shit.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you're going to lose to somebody, that'd be a pretty one to be like, I'm okay with that.
Oh, he killed that role. I couldn't have done it like that. I mean, I could have done it differently, but what he brought to it, he's a tremendous actor, and he really brought that role to life. And actually, that role was not supposed to be as big as it was, but he brought so much life to it that they made him a regular. They basically rewrote the show around. I mean, he had a huge role that character Chalky White became one of the main roles in that series. So he did his thing.
Very cool, man.
Omar coming.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
So kind of in parallel, I mean, you were doing the music thing, the acting thing. These were kind of going in parallel, right? You didn't stop playing music.
No. And, I got an agent, and I got a pretty good agent. And it was one of the bigger agents in New York City. And because I was new to the acting thing, I thought, oh, okay, well, shit, I just did this movie, and, I think I got 4th or 5th billing in it. And, I went to the Golden Globes and all this stuff. I thought, oh, okay, I got all these people telling me, man, you've never acted before. Oh man, you're going to be a star, right? These are people who don't know what it takes.
Right.
And I didn't know what it took. And so I thought, okay, cool. Let me get an agent, and shit, I'm about to be an actor up in here, son.
Right.
And one thing that gave me pause was we did for the premiere in New York, I sat at a table with what's her name? Ada Turturro. You guys know that actress?
I don't think
She's
so.
a cousin of John Turturro. You would know her if you saw her. She was in
Soprano?
Tony Sopranos. Yeah, she was in that. She played Tony's sister.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember the character's name. Janice, I think that was her name. But
yep, Janice Soprano.
Yeah. So Ada Turturro. And so I sat at a table with her and some other actors, and my wife was with me, and we had just watched the premiere, and all these people, all these actors were coming up to me. Well, they were like, oh man, you did a great job. And, just being very supportive of me. So I thought, okay, this is cool. I can do this. And we're sitting down having dinner, and she said, so what are your plans? You're a musician. I said, yeah, I always want to keep playing music, but I think, I'd like to explore this acting thing. And she's like, yeah, she said, you could try. And I was like, ooh,
oh, man.
And what she meant by that, we talked a little bit, and acting is hard. I mean, I think the biggest shocker is when you go to an audition and you see somebody that you've seen in a ton of movies at the same audition.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, this dude is auditioning. Okay. So that gives you pause, because you just think, oh, well, if I see this dude as a character actor in all these different shows and movies, why is this guy at an audition? I started to realize what that game is really about.
Yeah.
And I spent 2 years just going on runs, just driving into the city and going to auditions. And, in that time I booked the Lipstick Jungle thing. And, that's when the thing with Boardwalk Empire happened. But it just I realized it wasn't for me. Like, I would rather spend that time at my instrument, working on my craft that I already have an established career in. And after 2 years, I really realized that it really wasn't for me. It's not what I thought it was. It's not, once you get a movie, then you're going to be a star. Maybe that happens to some people. Like, I think that happened to Derek Luke, another actor who he did the Denzel movie. I would have to look it up. I'm not going to do it right now. But he kind of came out of nowhere, and Denzel booked him for this movie that he crushed, and then he went on, and he's got a stellar acting career now. But it just doesn't happen like that. Most people, and there's been documentaries that have come out since then, and there's people who've booked stuff that you see all the time, and they are struggling and maybe not even doing it for a living. So
right.
Once I realized the reality of it, I was like, nah, that's not for me. I would rather spend my time that it takes me, if it takes me an hour to get into the city and find a place to park, and then go sit and wait to audition just to have someone say thank you.
Right.
And you leave and don't know whether you got it. I could be spending that 2.5 to 3 hours at the piano,
Right.
So I just knew it wasn't for me. You have to really want it. You have to be passionate about it to give what actors give to do what they do. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for them.
Yeah. So like competitive and a tough hustle at the same time.
Man, totally tough hustle. I mean, tougher than I had ever imagined. I thought being a musician was hard,
Right.
And that's real. I mean, I really thought that being a musician was hard. I would choose the work of a musician over an actor anytime, because it's just, man, there are so many people, so many incredibly talented actors, And it's not, a lot of times, believe it or not, it's not even about, initially, not about, let me say, at a certain level, it's not about their talent. A lot of times it's about, well, we want someone who looks like this or who fits this role that the writer had in mind or the director had in mind. And then it's about whether they can act. And that's not always the case, but a lot of times it's circumstances that are out of your control. You know, you can go in and crush it, but you are just not who they're looking for, you know? So,
Right.
yeah.
Or like the Boardwalk Empire thing, maybe it changes, right? Once they hit on a person, boom,
Right.
a little magic happens. And if
Right.
you happen to be that person, then great. But if you're not, then
Right.
the game
Right.
just changed underneath your feet, right?
Oh yeah, and it's a tough gig. Like, I can't say it enough. I've probably said it 3 times, and I'll say it one more. I just have so much respect for what they go through, because that's a tough gig. That's a tough gig. And like the top, 1 or 2% are the ones that are superstars and making a living, killing it. So
Listen to a lot of kind of comedy podcast, and some of those guys are kind of coming up in the comedy scene, and they do a lot of trying to find even commercial gigs or any sort of gig, and it's just a lot of, I think they just have to be pretty resilient and be cut down a lot.
yeah,
So just kind of
Yeah.
add into this what you were just already saying.
yeah, it's definitely a war of attrition. Who wants it the most and who's willing to just stick with it and stay at it? Because sooner or later, it might blow for you. You stick with it, you might just get that shot.
Sounds like a really hard gig.
Yeah, yeah. And but the carrot at the end of the stick is, look at the superstars that we see in movies every day. I mean, that's a lot of people's dream right there, is to, be on the big screen or be on TV and be able to live a lavish lifestyle doing what you love. So what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Right. Well, and it's a lot harder than, buying a big old CNC machine and sitting around in Gentry, Arkansas, raking in that dough.
Exactly.
Custom knife maker money. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Life of luxury.
A life of luxury.
So kind of pinging on that, how did you come into the collecting thing, or taking it from Buck 110 and Swiss Army knife into something further? Is that something that came along, or an interest that got sparked later on?
Yeah, I mean, since I was a kid, I was a collector. So I collected comic books. I started out collecting Matchbox cars when I was a little dude. And so I had 3 or 4 cases of just Matchbox cars. And then it was Star Wars figures. And we had,
Right.
we had pie cherry trees in our yard. And so my hustle was, I would go pick the cherries. My mom would take the pits out, and I'd take them up to one of the local bakers, and I'd sell them to them.
Awesome.
And so I'd do that and get some money, and then go down to, the store and get myself a new Star Wars figure.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe, Star Wars, whatever.
Dude, G.I. Joe, right?
All day.
Don't get me started.
I had,
No, dude, yeah.
right.
Of course,
I had
it's Snake Eyes. Snake
all
Eyes
of
and
them.
Storm Shadow, man.
Yeah.
Man,
You didn't
come
show up
on,
to the
bro.
party for them. Why the
Already
fuck
know.
were you showing up?
Exactly. Who gives a fuck about a Kung Fu grip?
I think that was Hasbro's motto.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, so I was always into collecting. When I got a little bit older, it was comic books. I was a Marvel dude all day. And so I guess let me back it up a little bit. So as I got older, and I saw Rambo, Cobra, all that stuff, and I saw all those big beastly fixed blades. And so I was a frequent patron of the local Army Navy surplus store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would go in there and look at the cases, and man, I would come out of there with some ridiculous stuff. I mean, like Ontario machetes and, K-bar, like all kind of big crazy shit. And actually one that I still have that is probably one of the knives that I would say is one of my 3, which is I've posted it up a couple times, that Blackjack Mamba. It's got a big 8-inch blade.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was I was like, man, I need to go be a secret agent somewhere and just shank the fuck out of somebody with this thing.
Recurve.
Exactly. With the false wedge on top and, the double guard. I just thought, okay, this is some shit right here. So so fixed blades was really my focus, and as I got a little bit older and started going off into the mountains by myself, then I always had fixed blades on me. I always brought a couple. I always brought like two. I didn't really pay that much attention to folders at the time. I still always had that buck 110, and I would bring it with me, but I would never use it. I would always find a way to use my fixed blades. And I think I started, maybe, I hate to admit it, but I think maybe cold steel. I shouldn't say I hate to admit it. Maybe we should edit that out.
No knife shame. We don't believe in that here.
Sorry, my brother Lynn. I didn't mean to come off condescending, but I think cold steel was when I first started. Like
Same here.
Like maybe like 2002, 2003, 2004. I think that sounds about right. Right, those years. Like, would that be right?
Yeah, man, they were putting out some super quality product then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like the early to mid 2000s was when I first, and kind of the internet started really kind of jumping off at that point. Like YouTube was kind of the thing, right? And if my timeline is correct, I think that's about right. Like 2000, maybe 2004, something like that.
Yeah.
And I started checking out all the cold steel videos. I was like, who is this crazy ponytail having, rope knife slashing, who is this dude with all these big crazy knives? And so I started watching all these knife videos, and man, I got into it. So I started, all of a sudden I had a collection of cold steel knives.
I thought you were going to say biker shorts, but that's cool.
I only wore those when I used my cold steel knives.
That's right. Save the Lycra for the right time.
Right.
What was your first one?
I think what did he call it? What was the tanto? Did he call it like a mini katana or something? What was that?
They were black.
What was the tanto?
There's a Recon.
Red stripes.
Recon Tonto.
No, it wasn't the Recon. What was the other one? There was one that was like a long. It was
Magnum.
Like
It had a longer blade, kind of brass guard, craton handle.
The Magnum
that's
Tanto,
old
wasn't it?
school. That's early 90s.
Yeah, that's 90s.
I can't
Yeah,
remember.
I believe so. I think that's the dude.
I think that's the first one. I did eventually get a Recon, and I got what was the push dagger? He had like a double-edged push dagger too.
Was it the Safekeeper? And
Yeah.
Safekeeper 2.
Maybe that's what it
That
was.
it?
Man, Sean is on it, boy. I like that. I'm telling
You
you, the
don't
knives. I
play
don't
it,
even
man.
know
I'm
the names
telling
of.
When it comes to knives, I'm a fucking savant.
I like that.
I'm just an
I like
idiot.
that.
I think I got my Recon in 95 or something.
I got a
1995.
Magnum
that-
Hunter in 91.
Yeah, I had a Magnum Hunter.
That was a great knife. I
Yeah.
still have mine.
Man, I don't have any of those anymore. Not because they're not fabulous.
Of course, I gave it to my brother, and then I took it back when he wasn't looking.
There you go.
What'd you do with all your old knives, Nick? You don't have them?
No. Once I started moving into kind of the murky depths of the custom knife world, man, all that shit went out the door. I ended up, I've sold a lot of that stuff off. I had a lot of friends who they didn't know I was into knives, so when I showed them, they'd be like, "Oh man," I'd be like, "Oh, you can have it. You want to buy it?" So
Right.
I had a bunch of Benchmades, and I still to this day have. I still use some Benchmades, not a lot. Still,
What was your favorite Benchmade ever?
Probably the Griptilian.
Oh, let down.
Probably the
AFCK.
Griptilian.
AFCK all day.
Yeah, I would have to say. Yeah,
AFCK 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I think probably the Griptilian. But what I saw probably in. Man, see, I should have written down some notes, but I'm thinking like 2008 or 2009. I saw that, what was that Ken Onion Strider, the 301, the Kershaw.
Yeah.
You guys remember that one, the Speed Safe?
Oh, Speed
was,
Safe was.
Was it a ZT?
The ZT 301, it was like the Strider Onion.
Big
collab.
fat
Yeah.
wide blade.
Okay, I know the one.
Exactly.
Big
with
wide
the,
blade,
With
yeah.
the tiger
Yeah.
stripes. And I was like, what is this? I love that knife. And all of a sudden I had all of them. And then that led me to Strider because I had never heard of Strider before. And I was looking at videos and people, were starting to compare the two, and I was like, man, Strider.
That's some cool
So
stuff.
you guys who know me from the USN, know that was me. I was the Strider dude. I was.
Yep.
I had a crazy custom Strider collection as my collecting got more advanced. But from Strider, that opened me up to Emerson's, and then I'm trying to remember. I think Alan's website, the forum. What was that? Custom Knives and Guns.
Yep.
That's the one.
Yeah, that forum is that was my first forum experience, and then that led me to, I think, Jersey Devil, and then to Blade Forums, and then ultimately to the USN, which kind of became my home.
That's a crazy route to get there.
Yeah, you were at Custom Knives before you were on any of the other ones?
Wow.
Yeah, that was the first forum that I ever went to. And you know what's funny is, and I don't remember how I stumbled across it. I stumbled across it somehow. I don't remember how, but when I first went on the USN, I didn't like the layout of it, and I felt like it was hard to navigate, so I just never really messed with it. I think I joined that forum, I would have to look, like 2009 or 2010, maybe 2010. And it took me a while to actually warm up to the USN, and ultimately I ended up making lifelong friends there. Like that's my crew. But I don't know how I found Alan's forum first, and who did he share that with?
That was Kit and Neil Blackwood and
Trace.
Right, Black
Burke.
Yeah.
Trace Rinaldi.
Right.
Burke. Dudley Dawkins ended up, I think, owning it.
Okay. Yeah.
Good people.
Yeah, so that's kind of what. Yeah, and I got to know Alan pretty well, over the years, and ultimately got to know a bunch of you guys, just like many of us, just that forum life, spending hours a day on those forums, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a different time, right?
Yeah, it definitely was.
Way too many hours on those forums.
I don't know, man. I don't know if it was too many. It was good when we were there.
Yeah,
kind of miss it, but
yeah, it was. I mean,
it was great.
I definitely do. I miss it. It was a unique experience for me. I'm trying to remember when I got on the USN and went to my first Blade show. Laugher was the first dude that I met. Actually,
Really?
No. Laugher was the first dude who started commenting on my posts, because I had a pretty big knife collection, although it might not have been quality compared to some, but I had a ton of knives. I had like 100, different folders or something, which, that's not a small collection to start out with. And so I was posting.
Right.
No, that's solid.
Yeah. And so Laugher was like, I was like, oh man, who are you? What did he say? I can't remember, something like, who do you post stock or something like that? And he said, I post Najaro. I stoke post. Can I speak? I post stock Najaro 1225. So we started talking, and then I met him for the first time at my first Blade. So that was kind of like my first
disappointment. Oh, sorry, that's a wrong word.
Yeah, he was kind of the first dude that I started to actually interact with. Laugher's the coolest cat, so
he is a good dude.
That's still my dude. So
he knows we all love him.
Oh yeah.
He'll never hear this. He said he doesn't listen to podcasts unless he's the guest.
Right.
Oh hell, screw that.
That sounds about right.
I always wondered, where did you get your username from?
It's my initials of all my names and then my birthday. So my name is Nicholas J. Rolfe. So Najaro, I'm born on Christmas, so 1225.
Bam.
Boom.
Dude, you were born on Christmas? That's pretty awesome.
Check that
and
out.
It probably sucked a lot as a kid.
No, it was cool as a kid, because my parents were like, hey, whenever you want to celebrate your birthday, we're going to separate the two.
Pretty funny. We do that with one of my kids.
Yeah. So I always use that to just torment my brother and sisters, because they'd be chomping at the bit to open up their presents. And I'd say, well, you know what? I want to celebrate my birthday on Christmas Eve, bitches. So I can open up my presents a little bit before you. But ask me how it is now. Now it's a whole different story. Now people are like, oh yeah, bro. Yeah. Happy birthday. Now it's like an afterthought, but
Yep.
But it's all good.
Okay, so you went through kind of the forum cycle, right? Ended up at the USN, way into Strider, got into Emerson, started getting into customs. So one of the things you and I have talked about before, and I think this would be kind of cool to chat about on the show so people can kind of hear more about this. I think we all go on this journey, right? We've talked about it on the podcast before, where we all start out, like, oh my God, I could never spend Strider money on a knife, right? I could never buy a Sebenza. That thing's like $350.
Right.
It seems crazy, right? And you go through this nutty cycle, and people are on various points on that timeline where,
man, it's sickening. Sometimes
they get into a certain spot and they kind of hang there for longer. Other people keep going and kind of end up in a completely different spot. So in your case, you had like you said, you had a big collection. Yeah. And then did you kind of get it? Did you start sort of focusing after a little while? Like, oh no, I'm starting to pick my makers and I'm going to go more straight custom kind of stuff, or how did that evolve for you?
Well, just a second ago, I said it's sickening. And what I meant by that is, if I had imagined at the time what I would think was okay to spend on a custom knife, right? I mean, there was a time when I first started collecting that I was like, oh man, they want how much for that knife? Hell to the no. I'm not spending that kind of money. Right. Now put a couple zeros after that bad boy,
Right. Yeah.
And, you get to a certain point and I'm saying this to fellow knife enthusiasts, so I'm not trying to come off any kind of way, but you look at, I mean, of course, there's people that'll spend way more money than I could spend, but you spend, $2,000 on a knife, or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, whatever. You get to a point where you're just like, it's not a big deal. And to me, that's what's sickening, when you're like, come on, man, seriously. Yeah. But when it's something you're passionate about, then you know what you do, right? And my wife isn't going to listen to this podcast, so she won't know that I just said that. Because as far as wifey knows, this knives only cost like $200, tops, $200.
Yeah, set some of that out, I think. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's very
or let's not
slow.
Let's not do that.
Yeah,
it's the same with any kind of collecting. You see, you start seeing people with these high-end knives or high-end watches or stuff.
Right.
Then it almost becomes the norm to have that stuff.
Right. Right.
Sometimes you kind of look back and be like, holy shit, what did I spend on that stuff?
What the fuck was I doing?
Yeah.
But like, okay, so, but then we look at how it evolves. Then you start making smarter purchases, right? I mean, maybe like you said, you focus your collection more. And for me, the way that I don't know if I guess, I'm a collector at heart. My lifestyle has changed a little bit. So maybe I don't consider myself as much of a collector as maybe I once was, but now for me, it's about the personal relationships. Like now, like I consider all you guys my friends. So, and other people whose knives I collect, I consider my friends, or people that I talk to outside of, I have phone conversations with, or text conversations with, or when I'm in the neighborhood, we hang out, or you know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
To me, that's what it is now. It's not about how many knives can I have. It's about who do I like as a person, and who do I want to support or help support. And to me, that's what it's about now.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds kind of trite to say it, but it sort of transcends the knife, right?
100%. 100%.
It goes from being, it's about the thing to about what it is. And what it is isn't just the knife. There's more to the story.
And for me personally, I don't go to not very many knife shows anymore. I prefer the smaller shows now. And honestly, I go for the hang. Like if I win some knives, if I win some stuff, that's great. I just did the Pacific Northwest show here and won like 6 knives, and I haven't done that forever. I mean, I was winning everything. I was winning everything. It was a shock, but so that was cool, right? Because ultimately, that's the gamble that maybe you'll get lucky and win some stuff. But man, for me, it's just about the hangout. Like
it's
like
funny how many times we hear that.
Yeah,
over and over.
Yeah.
But it's true.
And it kind of seems like that's kind of the trajectory of this community, is everyone kind of gets in it for the product. And then all of a sudden you start meeting people from completely different walks of life. And you realize that you maybe had some misperceptions of what certain people or what this person might be about. And then you're like, oh shit, man, we got all kinds of shit in common. And we just had a conversation for 2 hours. and it seems like it was 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden, that's what it's about. So, I think that seems to be a pretty common trajectory in this community.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about that in some earlier episodes. The idea that once you start to put two and two together and start meeting people in person and spending time together at shows and all that, the spectrum is extremely wide, right?
Yeah.
There's this guy's a judge, and this guy is a bricklayer, and this guy is a military guy, and this guy is a politician, this guy is an actor and musician. This, you know what I mean? It's like this crazy scope that has some common threads that bring it all back together. And I mean, honestly, a piece of it, and this kind of goes to some of the earlier stuff you talked about your personality and kind of what drives you or has driven you in your life, is somewhere in there, there's like a compulsion, right? I mean, I think that kind of goes along with collecting, where when you get in hard, right? And you focus, and sometimes that's in good places and sometimes it's not in great places. And, maturing means figuring out how to make that a positive thing in your life, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Because like any other thing, it can be unhealthy. And I mean, we've all acknowledged that Sean Kendrick is completely fine with someone blowing a house note over a knife.
Right. And possibly even encourages it on occasion.
And encourages it. But, he's a little special. But, I think the best way to say it is my kind of, I don't know if careers, my journey in the collecting thing, it matured as I matured as a person. So,
exactly.
That's just what it is,
Yeah.
I never got myself in trouble over it, but there was definitely a period where I was spending a lot of money on knives, and maybe I could have saved some of that.
There's still time.
We're only about an hour in, champ. You got another hour to spend.
Right.
There's still time to save or get in trouble.
Right.
Whatever you want to roll
That's
with,
the question. But I mean, I think you would agree with me in saying that, maybe when you get to a little further along in your careers or whatever, when you have more opportunities to maybe, buy some more stuff, sometimes, for me personally, I don't do it as much now because now I'm more focused with it. It's not, I don't have to have it. Now it's like, oh, you know what? This is something that I really want. So I'm going to go ahead and spend the money on this. I'm okay with that, and now there might be something that I like and I'm like, but do I really need that? Like, and that's just as we mature.
When you're younger.
One of the things go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
No, I was going to say when you're younger, you feel like you have to, like Mark was saying, that compulsion, that drive, I guess is a nicer way of saying it.
Of the whole thing.
Gotta have it. Then once you get it, you're moving right on to the next one. Like you don't even enjoy what you just got. You're like, okay, I got that. Now what's next?
And it's the same whether you're collecting or making. You're driven to get the next best thing or try to make the next best thing. And sometimes it's unhealthy in how it can be done.
Right.
And we have to kind of control it and mature with it, like you said.
Yeah. So if I can, on that note, if I can flip the table on you guys a little bit and ask you, so do you find that as makers, you get to a point where you stop actually enjoying and admiring what you made because you're just on to fill a quota for a show, or you're just trying to bang out the next knife? Do you find that you lose some joy in it?
I think for me personally, I don't make it if I don't like it. And that's where I get myself in trouble sometimes, because I move on to something different, something new, something that, ignites something in me. And if it doesn't, once it becomes mundane or I lose interest in it and I have a hard time focusing on it. And that's sort of an unhealthy kind of way of doing it, because I should be able to just bang out some pieces and be like, hell yeah, it's the money and getting paid and stuff like that. But instead I'm like, it's not inspiring me. Let's move on to something different.
So I'd answer yes and no. And thanks for making me feel bad, Birch. But yeah, I mean, I have to make stuff. I mean, you got to pay the bills, right? I mean,
exactly.
At the end of the day. And like Birch, the designs that I've made that I make are all designs that I like. And at the end of the day, there's something about putting in an honest day's work, and there's something about making something with your hands where you've started with nothing, but at the same time, making the same thing over and over, each one is different. So each one is challenging, but I think sometimes my creativity suffers a little bit. And I'm trying to work on that and make time where I'm, for months I may go without doing any design work. And I've totally redone my office. So I actually have a design desk now, and I'm trying to keep it clean and make myself actually sit down a couple times, 2 or 3 times a week for a couple hour session. And it's really good. And we're actually making some of the new stuff. We've got it in progress, and I think that's very fulfilling, and I need to probably do more of that. And I've talked about doing some one-off pieces, because right now I don't do any one-off stuff. I mean, I can't afford to, but I need to kind of make some time for that, and then just charge accordingly. Those one-off pieces need to be at a different level, and they need to be special,
Yeah. So, dude, that makes a ton of sense. And I think you would enjoy the shit out of that. And now you've got me curious. I'd like to see what you would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have
something totally different than what I do now.
I think you have a healthy relationship.
I'm that much more curious about it.
With your work and, that balance. I think you're doing a good job of balancing the stuff that pays bills and doing new stuff and creating and doing different stuff. If I really wanted to look
sometimes,
if I really wanted to look deep into what I just said, it's almost a way of saying I can't work unless I'm satisfied in it. You know what I mean? It's almost like I need that rush of excitement of something new and challenging.
Well, totally. I get that.
Not almost. You absolutely do. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, but that's just, I think that's a great contrast. And that's why a lot of these conversations, in my opinion, on the show are interesting when we get into that stuff, because Tom's approach to the business of being a knife maker is so different from the way you approach it. I think Sean's probably a lot closer to you than he is to Tom, right? As far as approach to what you do and how you think about what you're doing, and just the whole process of knife making.
Yeah.
I think at the base of it, and I may be wrong, and maybe this is not right, but I think at the base of it, I'm not as good of an artist as Sean and Michael. I feel like maybe I'm more of a craftsman than an artist, and I feel they're taking nothing away from their craftsmanship, but they are more artistic than I am. And that's just the way I see it in my mind. And maybe I'm totally wrong there, but I think I'm pretty close to the mark.
Yeah, I think you're selling yourself a little short, to be honest.
Yeah, I was about to say, why do you say that? I'm just curious where that comes from.
Well, I mean, my niche market is kind of small fixed blades, and I don't, a lot of my stuff, it's not fancy. Most of my stuff is just, simple. Yes. And I feel when I look at like Sean and Birch's work, especially, dude, it's off the charts. It's like beautiful stuff. And I don't know. That's, like I said, that's just my take on it. And I feel that they are maybe more creative than me. I know, but like I said, that's just my thought process on it. Craftsman, I don't have to be creative when I go to work most of the time. I just go in and do what I'm doing, right? I can sit down and grind 20 blades. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to be creative. I'm just doing kind of rote work.
Yeah, man. But I think that oversimplifies it. Like, you're coming in, man. You have an aesthetic that is, man, it is simple and it's elegant, and that's tough to do. And you consistently do it every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Thanks.
And what I will say as a collector is what I would say about all of you guys, and what I can say about all my friends who are makers is, I can look at all of you guys' work and I instantly identify your work, and that is the measure of an artist. If someone can look at your work and say, "Boom, that's a Tom Crine, that's a Birch, that's a Kendrick," or any of our other friends who are professional knife makers, and to me, that's the beauty of being an artist, is that there is no set definition or set parameters that you have to stay within. You're free to do your own thing. and express your art or your craftsmanship, however you want to call it.
Right.
You're able to do that on your terms. And that goes with all creative people, whether it's musicians or actors or knife makers or anyone who gets to create. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it. All of us as a collective are fortunate to get to do what we do. And I definitely think you're selling yourself short, even though I understand what it is that you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I would not agree with your assessment, but I understand what you're trying to say.
Right. And thank you. But I think that we're all craftsmen, we're all artists, and we just have different amounts, possibly, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, yes.
No, I can see
so
this
that's
coming from that.
I think,
But I still think you're selling yourself short.
I think creativity is a
thanks.
compulsion, and I think how you manage it and work with it changes how productive you can be with it. And I think you do a very good job of balancing the productivity and the creative side of it. And I kind of envy that, being able to do it.
Thanks.
Yeah, and from standing on the outside, it's cool to see how each of you chooses to do your own thing, and that's a cool thing to stand on the outside and watch. How you guys set yourselves apart. That's a cool little identifier for me as a collector, and most of our friends, who consider you guys the same. I think that's a cool part of it. That's also part of the journey. Is to sit back and watch how you guys navigate your careers and your product and your business models and all.
Thanks,
that.
Nick.
Well,
Flipping the table on us.
Thanks.
Interviewing us.
Well, and I will say there's a lot that goes into it, and there's so many choices, and it's, from business model to marketing to sales to, I mean, it's just all over. I mean, a knife maker has to wear a lot of hats.
Oh yeah.
Yep, indeed. Businessman and artist,
The business side is what usually gets a lot of us.
A little bit.
I think Tom hit the point with the mix part, right? I mean,
definitely.
I think Tom doesn't think of himself as much as strong of an artist because I don't think he thinks about it as much as an art thing, right? Where Michael, you clearly do, right? And it's like this real personal thing, and you let that stuff, or resulting in beautiful and challenging things at the same time, right? That stuff becomes sometimes so central that it gets in the way, right? Now,
hell yeah.
It also manifests itself as something awesome on a regular occasion, which is great.
Yeah.
But I think I like the word craftsman, Tom. I think that's a very good word to use in this case, because
I agree.
It doesn't minimize the work that you do. It doesn't minimize the effort that you put into it, but it's the focus on crafting a product, right?
Yeah,
and
it's kind of all encompassing.
Michael and Sean craft products too, but I think they spend a lot more time focused on or sweating the artistic side or the aesthetic side or the kind of the stuff that's around it, right? The little sphere that's around their work. And the result is, I don't know, at least from where I'm sitting, they're really different things, right? I mean, they're super different business models, and
very much.
It's really interesting to see. I think it's fascinating.
It's definitely a ride. It's a fun ride,
Yeah, it's fun to sit on the sidelines.
I say fascinating, like I'm going to walk to the next cage at the zoo. That penguin cage, that was crazy. I'm moving on.
Well, you have a very, you have a very close relationship with a lot of makers, and you get to see how this affects our minds, our businesses, our everything, And so I think, as a people watching type of person that you are, and I think like a lot of us are, it's interesting to see how it affects each of us differently.
Right. So, we talked a couple minutes ago about how this whole community around knives is this incredibly diverse community, right? People from all different parts of the world, people from all different walks of life. One of the things that we wanted to touch on, if you're okay with talking about it, is the fact that there isn't as much diversity from a race perspective, right? In your case, I think there are probably a handful or less, maybe a large handful, depending on which show you go to, but there are not a lot of black knife collectors.
Right.
There are several, I guess is probably a better way to say it, and there are several makers, but certainly not at the kind of a mixture that we see in the general population. So from your perspective, Nick, is that ever kind of factored into any of your experiences around knives, whether it's shows or interacting with people or?
You know, it's funny because it's something I've always, obviously I was always aware of it when I went to shows. And I've always felt fairly comfortable moving around in a lot of different circles. I'm kind of a people dude, you know? So what the point that I'm about to get to is that the internet kind of changed all that. But in person, I never had any bad experiences. I had some people that looked at me a little sideways. Never had anybody get disrespectful or but I was always prepared for that. And I was always, and I think we talked about this a little earlier before we actually started taping, is I had misconceptions of myself that I was expecting because a certain person looked a certain way that, oh shit, okay, I better get ready. This dude's going to say something and I'm going to have to knock him the fuck out or something that it shouldn't, right? But it shouldn't be that way. Yeah. So I had I was dealing with the same exact thing that I was expecting somebody else to do to me. For me, that's always been, I move in a lot of circles like that. A lot of the things that I'm into, there's not a lot of people of color in, there's not at all. So, and I've been used to that in my entire life. So
why do you think
I've
that
really
is?
learned, man,
just to put you on the spot. I mean, I'm just curious.
I just think it's a cultural thing. And a lot of, at least, I can speak for the Black community, a lot of the Black community is not into, the outdoors and stuff like that. I'm not saying as a whole, but I'm saying the majority, like,
right. I can
most
see
of my
that.
boys are like, man, you're crazy going up in the mountains like you do. Like, what, and they don't know anything about a lot of that stuff. And that's just a cultural thing, and so
makes sense.
I kind of take it upon myself to kind of bring the light to some people, and they're like, oh shit, okay, that's cool. Like, what I've been missing out on this, I think that's what I can do is people who I can come into contact with, maybe I can turn them on to something just like they can turn me on to something, The internet changed all that shit. And you guys all know me, I'm not a dude. I don't get into shit on the internet. I don't get into stuff like that.
Right.
Every once in a while, if somebody says something crazy, I will check them. I will,
sure.
In a lot of the groups that we're all in together, every once in a while, and it hasn't happened as much recently, but kind of when the Facebook thing first started jumping off, and man, the internet is crazy. It's a shit show.
Yes.
You got people that'll say the most outlandish shit, and then if they see you in person,
they ain't gonna say
none of that's going to come out of their mouth.
Yeah.
And
keyboard makes a lot of people brave.
It sure does. And there's been times where I've had to check somebody, in some groups, and someone will say some crazy shit, some crazy racist shit, and I'm just like, hey, bro, that shit is not cool, and, I'm not going to come at it aggressively. I'm just going to come at it and say, hey, well, I'm one of those people you're talking about, and I don't do that, or I don't say that, or I don't have bad credit. I don't have, all the jokes, the jokes,
Yeah.
The internet changed my experience, just because I encountered a lot more ignorant ass shit.
But there's a lot of people ignorant.
Let me be more clear when I say internet. I should say social media. Let me be a little more specific.
Yeah.
Social media brings out the fucking worst, the worst in humanity. I have to say, I see some shit on there. I'm just like, man, let me just tune that out because there's no help for you.
Pretty sure you can cover. I mean, the whole internet is pretty much under that umbrella.
Yeah.
Except for this podcast.
Yeah. We are nice.
This is United Colors of Benetton right here, Playboy. We just need Billy Cho up in this piece and we're all good, man.
We're all hooked up. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's for sure rose-colored glasses involved, right? But, one of the interesting differences, and we've talked about this before, right, is some of the forum experience, certainly the USN experience. And, I'm going to speak probably more favorably than some might, but the USN thing kind of set a bar, right, on behavior.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Gated
It
community.
did a lot of that checking. It did a lot of that check that you're talking about, Nick, on everyone's behalf, right?
100%.
So if you're an asshole, they're going to call you an asshole. And if you go keyboard warrior, you're out, right? You're just not even involved in it anymore.
They just break
And it
your
was
account.
so far and few between. It was so far and few between there. I mean, and again,
Right.
maybe I'm being biased too, but I rarely saw, every once in a while, an asshole rolled through. And man, the housekeeping was swift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Barry.
Right. And yes, okay.
Yeah, I was about to say Barry would come through and take
Executioner.
He did not play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, and there's a certain beauty to that. And some people will say, oh yeah, but there were, certain people that still acted like an asshole and got away. Okay. Yeah.
Of course.
In general, I gotta say, compared to a place like Facebook or random Facebook groups or
Right.
Instagram for that matter, it's fucking Sunday school compared to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to-
I mean, all
to
that
the
other shit is
social media
completely
groups.
unfiltered. There's no
Yes.
stopgap.
Yeah,
there's nothing. You can say whatever the fuck you want to say. And it's like, man, and you're anonymous. So,
Right.
you can be brave,
Yeah. I was just talking to people earlier about they're talking about if the modern makers are too harsh on, or the old school makers are too harsh on the newer makers with the tracing and stuff like that. And I was like, no, you weren't around for the USN times. It was harsh. You
Yeah.
didn't fuck around,
Mm.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
it was great. It was very self-cleansing.
Yeah, that's it. That's a whole episode worth of conversation, right? But
Yeah.
it's definitely a different climate or environment for sure.
It is, but it's what I guess I want to say is what you're willing to, if you're willing to just let it roll off your back and not worry about it, then it's really a non-issue. But if you, sometimes I see something and I'm like, man, I just can't let that go. And
Right.
the funny thing is, you're not going to change someone who says some heinous ass shit. You're not going to change their mind. Now, if I could meet somebody that said some heinous shit, some crazy racist shit, and sit down, first of all, let's just get past the physical side of it. I'm a big dude, so maybe someone's not going to be as brave when they see me, or maybe they are. But regardless of that, what if we just sat down and talked
Exactly.
face to face, and then it's like, oh shit, we got something in common. Like, this is actually a cool dude. Maybe I'm not around a lot of black people, and maybe this is what I think because this is what's portrayed in the media. Unfortunately, the media oftentimes only highlights some crazy shit in the black community instead of the, vast majority of hardworking, educated, intelligent, loving people that are family people just like everybody else. That doesn't get highlighted.
Yeah.
So
Oh God, it's
what are you
the
supposed
lowest
to do?
denominator.
Exactly. So what are you supposed to do when you have a very small percentage of every, racial group that is ignorant as hell and doing some crazy shit, but all they're doing is showing people of color doing it? Then how can I can't be too mad if somebody's saying something crazy, but what if we got a chance to sit down? And when I have gotten a chance, I'm a gun dude, so I get into the gun community. I'm a pretty serious outdoorsman, so I get into that community, and I see all kinds of people sometimes that look at me like, "What the fuck? Like, who is this dude? Well, okay, what's going on?" But then we sit down and talk, and all of a sudden we're cool as hell. It's like, oh man, we got all kinds of shit in common. Like, forget about where we came from, forget about what the color of our skin is. All of a sudden we have similar views on something, or maybe if we don't have all similar views, we're actually hearing what the other person says. And maybe I just learned something from you, and maybe you just learned something from me. And I went away from this meeting like, okay.
Exactly.
So shit isn't exactly what I see it portrayed as, or, I was expecting this dude, the worst thing, and it's going to sound cliche as hell, is the worst thing as a black man, as a big black man, is to walk down the street and watch a woman clutch her purse or clutch her shit, or go into a store and see a person behind the counter, grab whatever on the counter and put it on the floor. That shit is heartbreaking, and it happens all the fucking time. It happens all the time. And there's no way that I could explain that to anybody. There's no way that I could make someone know what that feels like.
But Nick, do you think the same thing would happen if it was a white dude? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you don't think. I don't know. I mean,
no. I mean, I'm not going to say it doesn't ever happen, but man, look, I'm not looking for sympathy here. I'm just telling you how it is. Like, any black man in the United States, it's just is what it is, man. And I'm not looking for any sympathy. I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, because there are criminals that do some crazy shit, and there are criminals of color who do crazy shit, but it's heartbreaking, and
some of that, you do strike an opposing figure. You're a big dude, and I'd say that's probably a little bit of that too. If there's some big old dude,
ain't nobody scared of me. Shit.
Yeah, I don't get the issue, but yeah, no one's worried about me, but I get it. But I'll never understand it, I guess.
Right.
Fully.
Right. And I don't know what my point is by saying that. I guess my point is that it's very easy to let perception and opinion and
stereotypes,
rhetoric and stereotypes, all that is very easy to be lazy and just let that be the mindset.
Yeah.
But I think all of us, and myself included, and this is what I said earlier, when I bump into people, I'm like, okay, I better be ready. Like, this dude's going to say something crazy, or they're going to look at me crazy, or they're going to, my wife is white. So when we're together, we travel together, if I'm expecting somebody to say something crazy, and I'm going to have to do something about it. It very rarely happens. And I have to check myself on that the same way that I'm saying other people do. Same goes for me. I have to not expect, because the way someone looks, or what my perception is, or what my stereotype is, just like everybody else. And so,
but I think that's human nature a little bit. And I think that what makes us better is we go above and beyond that. I mean, to a point, correct? I mean,
if you're good, you do, but if you don't, which is unfortunately a lot of people, you don't look past we're scared of something that's different.
Right.
That's human nature.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of people don't do anything besides be scared of something that's different. And that's
right.
But I think most of the people that we hang out with at shows and stuff, I don't know. I feel like we're good. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're pretty good.
I don't think Nick is saying anything about the people at shows. I think he's just talking about a little bit of systemic racism, not shows in general. We kind of
And I got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but since we were on the topic, it just kind of flowed in that direction.
No.
Just it's kind of a bigger issue of the smaller kind of subset of what we were talking about. If that makes any sense, I might have used a bunch of wrong words right there, but
no, and
I need laughter over here.
I think you're right, and 100%. I mean, if you look at our country, where it's been, like my dad, who's has passed away now, but he grew up, he was born in the 30s, so he grew up in segregation, and so growing up, and they grew up, we lived in Nebraska, not a lot of black people up there.
Right.
They used the N-word. I'll just say it. I don't personally use that. I grew up hearing that, but I think, and I think this is part of. I don't think my dad was a bad guy. I don't think I think that's a bad word to use. Obviously, I don't know that he meant it like some people mean it. If that makes sense, I think it was just kind of habit and not thinking about it mostly. But I think what makes us better is, I think all of us here, we've progressed from our parents, and I feel like in general in our country we are moving in a good direction. And I think the internet opens us up to more people also, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I feel like
I agree to some extent about the internet opening us up, but it's a double-edged sword, because it gives people with negativity a voice,
I guess maybe we travel more too. I don't know.
And look, this country, the racism that this country is based off of is an unfortunate part of history, and
that we can't change.
It created some things like, okay, so you say the N-word, it's not about the intention it's used. It's about how it was used back in that time. It was
correct.
It was meant to hurt somebody. It was meant to cause pain by saying it, and to say that, you are less than me. So I'm going to put this name on you. I'm going to put this word on you. And, you know, some in Black culture have decided to take that word back and, you know, and use it as a term of endearment for each other. And that becomes a slippery slope, you know, that then it's all of a sudden, well, I can say it, but you can. And if you say this to me and you have this color of skin, it's cool. But if you say it and you have this color of skin, it's not cool. You know, I'd be more like, let's maybe don't use it at all. But that's a whole nother topic, you know. But the reality of it is this entire country is all immigrants from somewhere else. Everybody, except for the native culture that lived here, we all could go back where we came from. Like,
I'm second generation.
We're all from, So at the end of the day, you know, we're all kind of in the same boat. But you know, you get into the economic side of it, and you know, cultural. I mean, it's so deep. I mean, we could turn this into a Oprah episode. Shit.
I was about to say we got real deep for a knife podcast here. Real. Sometimes
it's interesting to me because it's, you know,
I think sometimes I look around the internet and I think we've regressed.
Exactly.
Because I think
it's the same risk that Nick just talked about, right? Where sometimes if you let it roll unchecked and let it, you know, roll off your back, does that somehow make it okay, right? Or that voice stays loud, or you know, it turns already, you know, like use of certain words or whatever, right? All that stuff is, it evolves to the point where it takes already slightly troubled waters and makes them maybe unnavigable, right? I mean, it just gets fucked up fast.
And it's not about, yes, Mark, I will say that. And to add to it, it's not about trying to hear the other person out, and it's not about civil discourse. It's about screaming louder.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. I think the anonymity of the internet has hurt us in a deep way. And like you were saying earlier, if you just sit down and talk about shit, you know, I propose we open a damn army surplus in every neighborhood in America.
Right.
And we will all get along.
All of a sudden you'll see people from all walks of life in there like, oh shit, you're into this too? You know?
Well, that was kind of the reason I wanted to ask that question was, you know, not to turn it into a socio-political commentary show or something, but I think it's an interesting contrast. And I think, and you can tell me if this is a fair assessment or not, Nick, maybe it's not. You grew up in an environment, a much more integrated environment from a race perspective than lots of people of color have.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%. I was adopted, so I have a brother who's Black. I have sisters who are white. You know, I grew up in various different types of communities. So for me, color was not an issue until I started experiencing some crazy shit, and it really shook me to my core. Like, you know, I grew up where color wasn't. It wasn't even a thought in my mind. Even though I knew that me and my brother looked different from our sisters, I never questioned it because all I got was love. But when we moved to Seattle, we moved down the block from this dude who was, man, crazy racist. And he threatened to burn me in his oven in his backyard.
Oh, damn.
Holy shit.
And it terrified me. And I went running home crying. And that's the first time I saw my pops like, man, I just never saw him like
ready
this.
to
You know,
kill
the
someone.
dude was man. He went down to this dude's house, and you know, my pops, you know, he wasn't an aggressive. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't that dude. But he was that dude. Like he just
Papa Bear came out.
Man, and the guy, this dude, our neighbor, he was a retired Marine, and he had, you know, he had his USMC stickers and flags and American flags and all that stuff. And man, my dad just went down there and was just like, bro, you know, I didn't go with him, but you know, we've talked about this many a time. You know, my father just passed away a couple months ago, but we talked about it many times. And he said, look, man, I was nervous, you know, but he said, I'm not going to have someone talk to my kid like that. And he was ready to do whatever, you know. And he just went down there and knocked on the door, and this dude invited him inside. He said, no, thanks. And just let me tell you, don't talk to my kids again, period. If you talk to my kids again, there's going to be a problem. Are we clear? And dude was just like, okay. And that was it.
Right.
It never happened again. And my dad was like, shit, he probably would have whooped my ass all up and down the street. He said, but I'm not having that. Yeah. He said, I'm not having it, And I guess this is one thing I'll say, and then maybe we can just move on.
Yeah.
But I'll say this. As a black man in the United States, I will say that the common perception is that things have gotten better. And if you want to say better since like the days of segregation before the civil rights movement and all that, yes, things have gotten better, but things haven't gotten that much better. But it's in terms of what we experience, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I always have been. You guys know me, and people in the night community know me. You know what kind of man I am. And that does not change the fact that I've been stopped by police for no reason, absolutely no reason, just because of the way I look. And I have close friends who are police officers. So this has nothing. I'm not trying to get into any political bullshit. I'm just stating a fact that black men, specifically black men in this country, you have to be really careful, and you have to have an extra set of skills to navigate peaceably. Let me just say it like that. And by saying that, I'm not trying to start any trouble. I'm not looking for sorrow. I'm not looking for handouts. I'm just stating a fact. I've been stopped multiple times in my life. I've had people, nervous because I come around, and that doesn't change anything. That doesn't change the type of man I am. I'm still always going to be a people person. I'm going to reach out a hand to help whoever. If I see somebody in trouble, I'm going to do whatever I can to help. But it's a fact. And that's just what it is. So the extra set of skills is we just have to learn how to navigate the waters and do our best to disarm any misconceptions and keep our minds open as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So and I'll just leave it at that. It's it's a deep topic, and it could go a lot of ways. We've got a lot of work to do in this country here, and all of us do. It's a team effort. Teamwork makes the dream work, baby.
Yeah.
If we're willing to do it, then maybe we can make some progress. But if we're not willing to sit down and listen to each other, and really listen and really hear, all of us, each individual, man, ain't nothing gonna change, bro.
Yep.
The interesting thing I learned from having the kids and stuff is my boy absolutely does not give a shit about anyone of any color in his class.
It's learned.
It does,
100%.
Does not register. I mean, he knows that someone's different color, but does not give a shit.
Nope.
Right.
So it starts
Good job,
with the parents.
Mom and Dad.
Well, I mean, but
good job.
Oddly enough, though, if someone has a lot of tattoos, and I don't know where this came from, probably from movies, or something, he'll be like, he's a little sketchy about someone with too many tattoos. Kind of strange. I have to be like, you're judging, a book by its cover. That's not the way you can act. It's interesting what he believes is, different or wrong or right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say this, I will add this, which is what we can all do, all of us as individuals, if we see something wrong, or if we hear somebody say something wrong that we don't agree with in person, if you see somebody, if you see something like someone being picked on for their color of skin or whatever, we have the right to speak up and say something, acknowledge it, not just be like, oh man, that's fucked up and walk away, and I would extend a hand to my brothers, my white brothers, to say the same thing, to be like, oh man, if you see something crazy or if you hear something, to be the one to speak up, and just, I'm not talking about getting into arguments on the internet. That's a waste of time. But you see what I'm saying? Like, sometimes to hear it from someone who looks like you is like, oh shit, maybe that wasn't cool to say,
Yeah.
Right.
Just like you do with your kids, my kids don't care about gender. They don't care about sexual orientation. They don't care about color. They could give a shit about any of that. Like, it makes no difference to them, but it does start with us. And so we can turn around and say the same thing. If we see something wrong, we can be the one to speak up and bring attention to it. So, and by that, I'm not saying all of a sudden we're trying to be in the Jesse Jackson coalition. I'm not trying to say all that. I'm just, we'll just leave it at that.
Let's lighten it up a little bit. I've got a serious question for you. Do any of your shirts have a top button?
Oh, come on now.
Oh, man. You know what?
Too.
So I used to tour with this a buddy of mine. His name is Russell Gunn, and he had this band called Ethnomusicology, and we toured all over the world for a lot of years. And he got several Grammy nominations. Really talented guy. And they used to call me full chest exposure for that very reason. They'd be like, man, this motherfucker got like one working button on his shirt. I'm like, come
That's
on, bro. I'm just trying to
fantastic.
sell records, man. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Sell some records, you know.
Hey, if you got it, flaunt it.
Yeah.
I've
There's
got
a reason I don't get to wear shirts. Like
Yeah, right. Me too.
I think you should do it, man. I think you really should.
Do you
Go all
think
in,
Abby's gonna
Birch.
Go for that?
Nobody else does.
she is not going for that.
All right. Well, on that note, let's get back to some knife stuff. So, man, we know you're a collector, but you're also a user. Let's go in depth a little bit on that. We know you do some search and rescue, so fill us in on that.
Yeah, well, so the outdoors is pretty much, I would definitely consider a part of my DNA. I mean, the outdoors was where I first started really using my knife, so it would make sense, right? I mean,
Yeah, sure.
so I think I mentioned before that I spent a little part of my life trying to go after being a firefighter, and my life kind of changed in a different direction, and I pursued the music that had been a part of my life for just as long as the outdoors. And we recently, in 2016, made a move back to the Pacific Northwest as our home base. We still kind of bounce back and forth between New York and here, but when I got back here, I knew that I wanted to make the outdoors kind of more of a priority in my life again. It had always been in my life, but music, you know, New York, it is a hustle, it's a grind. You know, I was traveling all the time, and I didn't really have time to get into it like I liked, and I really missed that part of my life. I was definitely missing a piece of me. That might sound corny, but it's about as real as it gets. And you know, maybe some of you get this same sensation, but when I get around mountains or when I see the forest, everything, I get a feeling in my chest, like no bullshit. Like I get like a little, I don't want to say a flutter, I don't want to sound corny, but it's just, you know, it's a palpable feeling. And I knew that
right.
I wanted, it does. And so there was, I already knew there was a couple things. One is I knew that I wanted to figure out a way to give back a little bit. I felt like, you know, we've been very fortunate in our life. You know, my wife and I, you know, have very, you know, very happy careers. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but you know, we've been blessed. I'm not trying to sound corny, so maybe that's a bad word to use, but I wanted to try to figure out a way to not make it about the constant chase of what's next for me, what's next for us. So I was thinking about ways I could volunteer maybe. And I thought, well, you know, the cliche thing for a musician to do is go play at like a senior center or something like that. Just go donate your time. But that didn't really appeal to me. And then there was a massive fire here in Oregon. I'm in Oregon now. And there was a massive fire that we actually drove by and got a video of, which was pretty crazy. I mean, it was a massive fire in the gorge. And it got started by a dumbass kid during a fire ban. He threw some fireworks off a cliffside, and it ignited a massive forest fire that just was devastating. Yeah. And we were following that on the news, and they showed search and rescue crews hiking into stranded hikers above the fire line and sheltering in place with them overnight. And a light just went off in my head, and I was like, that is perfect, because that gives me the opportunity to be of service, and it gives me an opportunity to feed that itch of just spending a lot more time in the outdoors and actually working, like not just going for hikes and backpacking and all that, but actually working, you know.
Right.
And so that started a year-long training program, and to get a bunch of different certifications. And I had to do an oral examination, an interview, and I had to do a physical assessment, and I had to do a bunch of first aid stuff you have to go back and get that every 2 years. You have to recertify for that. And I joined Pacific Northwest Search and Rescue, and it has been an amazing experience. So the team is made up of a bunch of just great people, men and women, everything from military to lawyers to doctors to bartenders, but a bunch of like-minded people, a bunch of studs, really. I'm in awe of my teammates every day, every mission. I'm just like, wow, so it feels like I'm really a part of something kind of special. It's been incredibly harsh and scary at times, and it's been incredibly fulfilling and almost euphoric at times. There's nothing like, taking your body to the edge of exhaustion and feeling pain or whatever, and then you find somebody alive and watching them reunite with their family, and
Yeah.
there's nothing more heartbreaking than having the family come up to you with this look of complete hope, like you are the last chance, and have them look at you and just say, he's a good boy, he knows what he's doing, and then ultimately you find that the worst has happened and you have to bring him back out. That's a heartbreaker. The euphoric side of it is what I choose to focus on, and that kind of helps me navigate. I have ultimate respect for first responders who have to deal with that stuff a lot. It's a heavy load. But so far the positive euphoric side of it, if you choose to focus on that definitely kind of, it makes it all worth it. I'll say it like that.
Well, and it seems like even in the bad situations, as heartbreaking as it is, at least you're helping families get to closure one way or the other. And
yeah,
that probably sounds terrible to say out loud, but
but that's real. I mean, we have that conversation all the time. Our team has they call them resilience meetings, and that's one thing that I like about this team is there's absolutely no ego. I mean, there's combat veterans here. Some of my closest buddies on this team are guys who have put in a lot of work overseas, and being able to confide in your teammates and just talk real about what you just saw or what you just experienced, it's amazing how much that helps, and to have a loving family to come home to, and all those things help. So there's no ego on this team whatsoever. There's no, if you get on a mission and you come upon something that you don't want to see, you can just say, not today, boys. Like, I'm not up for this today. Yeah. And it's like, no problem. You hang back. We'll go handle this. And it's not even a second guess. Nobody bats an eye. And I really, really love that. It's all about just being completely open and honest. And it makes it so you can trust your teammates and quite literally, you're trusting your teammates with your life in some of these situations. And that's no bullshit. That's just the facts. You are trusting, you're putting your lives in your teammates' hands. So being able to trust them is, it just takes a whole bunch of stress out of the equation. So it's been a great experience. And sometimes I think, I wish I could have done this earlier. I wish I would have gotten into this earlier. But it happened the way it was supposed to happen. And I was at a point in my life when I could dedicate time to this because it takes a lot of time, so trying to navigate this with my career is a little bit challenging. And I find myself exhausted a lot. But man, life is short. So, I just want to live it to 100 billionth percent, just live it fast and full. And, whenever my time comes, I'm going to be able to say there's going to be no question that I lived it full. So take that to the being able to use my knives. I use knives a lot in that capacity, and I spend a lot of time in the outdoors. And my fixed blades.
Has using knives changed your thoughts on knives?
It has, and I will say, it makes me consider myself much less of a collector, because now I'm now, Tom, if I reach out to you or something and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm looking for, or whatever, now I have a purpose in mind. And so while it's cool to add something to the collection, I'm not really looking at it like that. I'm looking at it like, okay, this is going to give me another option for X, Y, or Z. So what I find more now is I need something that's tough and impact resistant and easy to sharpen in the field. That's
right.
That's what I run into. Is like I need to be able to tighten up an edge or something, or I might have to. A lot of times if we're out on a mission and it's starting to get dark or it's wintertime and we have to start a fire, and we got to go find a dead tree, and if there's snow on it, knock the snow off of it. Cut some branches and baton them to get to the inside where it's dry. I mean, that's like a super common occurrence. So I got to have a knife that I can beat on. We probably did that 12 times last winter,
Wow.
And so I need a knife that I know is going to be able to do that for me. There's not going to be a question that I'm just going to, I guess.
So with
turn it sideways and beat on it.
Yeah. With your experience, do you have a favorite steel?
I'm a 3V guy. I love 3V. Yeah. I mean, it just, it takes a licking. Although, 01 and A2, all that stuff. I mean, I can beat on all that shit, and that's more for fixed blades. For my folders, while I do use them in the field, I use them more for, basic cutting tasks. So it's really less of an issue. It's more about, can I maintain a quick sharp edge? Can I strop it up real quick if it gets, right. My buddy Brian Glowacki, who you guys know well, 5 Thought Brian, he sent me a couple of these little roll-up strops, these little leather strops that you can roll up really small. Man, I keep one of those in my pack. So cool. I mean, I use cool. He sent me a few of those, and I use them all the time because I can just drop it in my chest rig or drop it in my pack, and I can literally pull it out, loop it on a tree, put the little loop, find a little nub or something on a tree and hold the other end and just strop it back and forth and get a nice little sharp edge. But I can't really tell the difference between, in that capacity, like for my folders and stuff, I can't tell any difference. I noticed that anything that I have that's like S30V or, something crazy like S110V, which I very rarely take out into the field, that's a little harder for me to personally get a sharper edge on. And, I could be talking out the side of my neck right now. Maybe I'm just imagining that, but I find that my tool steel blades, they just, you can put an edge on them super quick and get right back to business. So I would say 3V is my top choice.
Which 3V is a hard one to sharpen too.
I was about to say that's
yeah, and so maybe maybe I'm just imagining things.
Well, no, but it tunes up. I can strop up. Once it's sharp, if you maintain it, it tunes up real nice on a strop or a steel.
And this is what I'm saying. Like Sean, I sent you a video. I think as I used that Partisan fixer. The man, what is that? It's like it's 1/4-inch 3V.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, man, I chopped through. I think I sent you a video of it. I batoned through like side on, chopped through probably a 4-inch chunk of hardwood. Just blazed through that, beating on it, on the spine, knocked right through it. Man, I touched that thing up just on a strop, and that is blazing right through paper. I mean, so like I said, maybe it's my imagination. I don't really know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm not trying to act like I'm a tool steel snob or expert, but I really love 3V, and it works well for me in the capacity that I use my knives.
Well, I think that's
It's a great steel.
There's people that talk about great steels, and that's what was important to ask you what you like, because you're using them in a very hard, heavy duty type of capacity. Right. So it's interesting to hear what you have to say about it, because a lot of these tool steels have been great for a very long time.
Yeah, and like the Tom, I use your little, what is it? The man, I'm blanking on the name right now. Tom, what are the little the bushcraft utility? Is that what they are? Kind of the medium size?
Yeah, the little Warncliffe blade.
No. What's the next size above that?
Technical.
Yes, the technical. Man, I have one of those on me all the time, and that is, those I think are 01, I believe.
01 or A2. Yeah.
Yeah, I think mine are 01, and man, that shit just takes an edge like crazy, you know. And it
01's
gets a
great
little
steel,
microchipping.
It is.
Yeah. And I've noticed one of them I use quite a bit, and it's taken a little bit of a beating. I've gotten some little microchips up in the tip, but I've literally put some work on some. I've got some of this wet dry paper that goes up to like 2,000 grit, and man, I can get that bad boy. You know, I can sit down and do 20 passes starting at 500 or 200, starting at 200 and go up to all the way up to 2,000, and that bad boy is sharp. So I like the fact that I can do that.
Right.
So
it's definitely a good steel. I love, for bushcraft, I really like 01 and A2 because they're finer grain. I'm actually playing around with AEBL, and I think AEBL is probably going to be my go-to bushcraft steel in the future. It's
what do you like about that? I haven't experienced that one yet.
So it's stainless to start with, which is bizarre. It's also tougher than pretty much any of the other steels I use, or just about any of the steels being used in knife making right now. It's the toughness is close to S7. It's pretty crazy.
Damn.
It's fine grain, so it carves good. And because it's so tough, you can actually go harder with it. And I don't know, it's an interesting steel. It's an underrated steel. I've been playing with it quite a bit, and I've been going thinner on some stuff. I just made myself a personal knife that's 70 thousandths thick with a full flat grind. And just playing around with it.
Heat treated too.
It's only 60. That's where I want to go next, because at 64, it's still markedly tougher than most other steels.
I wouldn't say it's underrated, though. I mean, it gets a ton of use in a lot of the custom
it's like
kitchen
knives. Stuff, right?
Correct, but it doesn't get used in the other parts. Like you won't see a lot of belt knives out of AEBL, which it's a better steel than 52-100.
Yeah.
It's stainless, plus it has better edge holding, and 52-100 is a great steel. It's ball bearing steel. Ed Fowler and some of these guys made it great reputation. I've got a lot of knives out of it, and AEBL actually performs better than 52-100 from what I've seen. So it's an interesting steel. Like I said, I started playing around with it for kitchen knives because I was looking for something, and I think it's probably the best choice for a kitchen knife. And
isn't that what Jerry did, that run of kitchen carvers that he did a little while ago? Do you guys know? Wasn't that AEBL?
Yeah,
I would guess.
Yeah, he did the big ones.
Okay,
they did.
Yeah,
I actually got one of those.
Yeah.
I forget I have the.
That's cool.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Tom. I was thinking that I thought that's why so I do have a knife made out of that. I just haven't really put it to hard use.
But yeah, it's just an interesting steel.
Got a chunk of it. I just haven't heat treated yet because I don't have. I got to get a doer.
Or send it to Braddock. I mean, that's who I'm using now.
Braddock, eh?
Note to self.
Yeah.
Call Tom crying about AEBL bushcraft knife. Okay, just stack that aside. Anyways, yes, please continue.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, we'll play around with it, but yeah. I just got a whole bunch of bread knives and carving knives back from Braddock heat treating, and they're all AEBL, and I'm excited to start grinding with them.
So,
Very cool.
What is you guys' opinion on your collective opinion on the Nitro V? Because I've been hearing a lot of rants and raves about that too, as a good tough.
I kind of like it.
Supposed to be great. I've got a chunk of that too, but once I got to make some knives out of it.
I just made about 30 or 40 out of it. Basically, it's
earlier today.
Yeah. While we're
earlier today, I knocked out 30
while we're doing the podcast.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, I think the nitro steels, nitrogen steels have a lot of potential. I think Z Finite was good. I think it was a step above H1 from Spyderco.
Yeah.
I think the Nitro V is a step above the Z Finite, in my personal opinion. It's able to get harder. It's basically a nitrogen. It's AEBL with nitrogen in it. So AEBL is pretty high on the stainless scale, and Nitro V is just off the scale. It's literally off the scale. It's crazy. And everything that AEBL does, it kind of does, except for the hardness. You can't get it as hard. So that's where it's going to, kind of limit out. But it's an amazing steel for like saltwater or corrosion or, like a bird and trout knife or something like that. I think it's a great choice.
But for like,
we'll be using a lot.
So similar to that, was it that H1? What are those salts made out of?
Yeah, that's H1.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So, but how's that, when we're talking about the AEBL in a higher, 63 some odd Rockwell, how's that going to affect his ability to field sharpen? That's what I wonder about using that.
Shouldn't be a problem. It doesn't have AEBL, and that's part of why AEBL is not in as much favor. I don't think it's not a super high wear resistant steel, so it's still going to continue to be relatively easy to sharpen because it doesn't have that super high wear resistance. So what you can do, and sorry if I rant, my personal opinion is geometry is the big thing, right, in cutting ability. And so
always is.
All of a sudden you have this steel that you can get hard. It's still tough. It's flexible. It sharpens relatively easy. I think it's a pretty neat thing. Of course, I'm also the weird guy that likes D2 and the chromium, the big grain, different things for different tasks. I'm very task oriented with my knives.
I'm a big fan.
I think Nitro V is cool stuff.
I'm a big fan of being able to sharpen, anywhere, anytime if you need to. For actual use. The wear resistance is great and all if you're, just want to cut cardboard all day long or whatever. But if you're skinning, doing stuff like that, field dressing or doing like what he's doing, I want to be able to sharpen it easily and quickly.
Right.
But my personal opinion is you can sharpen any of those steels in the field.
You can, but I don't want to have to take a diamond hone and do weird.
What are you going to
shit.
take? You're going to take a coffee cup? It's easier to take a diamond hone.
I'd rather just use a strop and not have to wear the blade down excessively. I want to be able to.
I kind of feel the same way. But
I do both things. So I guess it all depends on what you carry in the field. When I go in the field, and you saw this when we went on our boar hunt, Michael, I was the only guy that had stuff that could sharpen the guide's knife.
I didn't go on the boar hunt. Buddy.
Oh yeah, you bailed.
You guys made a paper plate.
You bitched out
on it.
Still upset about it. I still have the plate. Dude. But I was the only one that was able to sharpen. One, you have to have sharpening skills. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't have, period. So it doesn't matter what it is. They can't sharpen that shit in the field. And two, with diamonds and ceramic. So I have a ceramic from Spyderco, the little dual hone, and it's in a leather case, and I've got compound on one side so I can strop there. Mm-hmm. If I go past that, I use the ceramic. If it goes past that, I have a dual fold diamond hone with coarse and fine. Yeah. I can sharpen anything in the field with that.
Oh yeah.
Quick and easy.
And weight is negligible, right? We're talking ounces.
Yeah. It's two little things.
Yeah.
Weighs less than your buck knife.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a little intimidated with my sharpening skills, and that's something that I really want to work on. Like I said, I'm pretty good and pretty fast with working with wet dry, grit paper. Right. I'm good with that at home. In the field, I just carry a leather strop. So that is definitely a hole in my game that I am actively working on getting my shit together with that.
I'll post a little picture of what I carry. It's simple.
Nice.
And lightweight too. And you can really just switch to the diamond hone and skip the other. You won't be able to get as fine of an edge, but you'll still sharpen stuff and it'll still cut if weight's an issue.
I only use the Arkansas stone that's in the pocket of my survival knife.
Yes.
There you go, baby.
It's a Randall. It's an Indian stone.
Yeah. Orange Norton.
I mean, aside from having to sharpen stuff for the rest of the guys on his team, the nice part about where Nick is at is he can come up with a kit that works for what he's taken. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it really comes down to how much am I carrying, which it always does, then, he can pick and choose because he knows what he's taking with him.
Right. Right.
And he's got good knives. So
Yeah, but I think that'd be the awesome part about getting to create, because we all, as kids, went out and pretended like we got to do what Nick's doing now, with our knives and setting our little traps and doing things like that. And he actually gets to do it and refine his kit and his skills and all that stuff. And that's kind of envious of that type of situation, I guess.
Well, and that's the beauty, and I always value Nick's input and the videos that he makes, because it's like, he's actually using this stuff. So, I mean, it's not like sitting in the safe. So if he tells me something, I'm like, oh yeah.
That's funny because, this kind of takes it back to the, like the USN and the forum formats, right? Because that's what we all used to do is use some shit and then write a review about it and get feedback from our peers and our colleagues or whatever. And that has kind of gone out the window with the new kind of picture-based instant gratification of kind of what, I'm guilty of it too, of kind of what social media has become. So I've really tried to make an effort. I haven't had much time recently just because I've been crazy busy, but I've tried to kind of get back in. People who knew me from the forums know that I used to love to, post big wordy reviews and pictures and and all that stuff. Right. And that's kind of what I was known for on the forums. And I really loved that side of it. And so I've tried to kind of work that back into the social media side of it, the Facebook and a little bit on Instagram. It's a little bit hard on Instagram just because of the way the format is, but right. And it's funny because there's a lot of people who kind of dig that still. So I like that. I like that some of the people in the community still like that. Every once in a while I get the comments of, man, too many words, but nice pictures. So I'm just like, so maybe that's not for you. Maybe that's not for you. And it's all good, different strokes for different folks. But I do enjoy that. And that takes me back to 10 years ago or whenever kind of the heyday of the forum format was. And I really do miss that.
Right. No, I absolutely remember composing many posts in a text editor, because if I tried to do it in that fucking text entry window on USN and hit post, the shit would disappear. And it's like, oh my God.
Have to start all over again. Right.
Exactly. Right. So, all right, I'm going to put this together someplace else and then copy paste it. And
pictures wouldn't be the right size.
Mm-hmm. Oh God. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That we've talked about that before, the whole durability of information and, having it archived and whatever. And kind of the whole thing is today, I'm going to use the word devolved into some kind of drive-by. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Twitter, 140 character long.
Right.
Weirdness. And
hit it and quit it.
Okay.
Yeah. We had our DSLRs taking photos in our light box made from the Coop tutorial that we would compose this big old long ass thing and then check 5 minutes later, be like, I hope someone checked it. Thinks it's cool.
Right.
Validate my work, please.
Right. Validate my existence.
Yeah.
Right.
I think people that have never had that piece of it, where they came across something where it was, because that's the reason that we did it. Okay, yeah, there's some validation aspect to it, but there's also, I'm going to do this because I found a post where someone actually wrote some shit that made sense, that helped me figure something out.
Exactly.
Right? I learned something, or I got to virtually experience something that someone did or saw, or a piece that they used or whatever. And that's cool, man. So if I can do something like that and somebody else gets something out of it, that's kick ass. It's worth
part of the whole,
typing for a while.
Doing the whip threads was just, you're just like, I'm showing how I do it.
Right.
And maybe someone could do it this way and helps or not, we all learned a lot from those.
100%. I still have, crazy ass John Frederick. I still have his tutorial about lanyards, and I still, if I ever want to tie a different type of lanyard, I still go to my bookmarks and pull up his super, super articulate post about how to tie all these different lanyards.
Yep.
So that was definitely a resource.
Yeah. Very cool. Man, this thing has been a very interesting conversation, right? We get off into the social commentary side of things. We're talking about social media. We're talking about saving people's lives and doing cool shit. knife nerd stuff.
Right.
27 opportunities that Sean missed with "That's What She Said" jokes during the
Open
steel
chest.
conversation.
Look, man, that went through my mind so many times, but I was like, I'm not going to be that dude. I'm not going to say that's what she said.
I can get that ABL really hard.
That's what she said.
And I quit playing T-ball long ago.
All right. So, Nick, we just had a very well-received episode. Episode 30 of the show was this 3-knife collection thing.
Oh.
So let's play 3-knife collection.
Yeah.
This is like the
Man, come on, bro.
a fun thing here at the end of the show. So if you could only keep 3 knives out of whatever you have today, if you could only keep 3, what would your 3 keepers be?
Man, that is an impossible question. I've
Exactly.
been trying to think about that. It's so hard. It's so hard for me to figure that out. I would say, first of all, my Blackjack Mamba, the fixed blade that I got.
I like that.
Man, I probably got that in 90, maybe 91 or 92. It's missing a screw in the handle, so I'm still gonna try to figure that out. I found this place where I live that is called Tacoma Screw, and they have like
I might have
screws
one.
and bolts that fit everything.
Yeah.
I might have one.
Look at that shit.
I'm just saying. Shoot me a PM afterwards.
Damn,
It's under the mountain,
amazing.
in the pile.
Yeah. It's
Right,
in the
but
dungeon under the mountain.
I appreciate that. That wasn't my intention, but that's a beautiful little occurrence right there if that works out. But I will definitely keep this thing just because it's got sentimental value for me. I do have
It's like a first love knife.
I think so. I mean, I have my first Swiss Army knife. I still have my first Buck 110, but they don't have the same. I don't know. They're not on the list. Let me just put it like that.
Dude, the Mamba was sexy, man. Those lines. Oh,
Yeah, I'm telling you, just a curve,
especially for a factory knife.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was one of my early big knife loves.
I wanted one so bad.
I'm going to tell you a funny story about that, and then I'll get back to the question. But so when I first moved to New York, I had this. Back up a little bit. When I was spending a lot of time up in the mountains before I first moved to New York, I had this knife maker make me a custom shoulder holster for different
awesome.
knives, and I could just clip. I still have it, and I could just clip stainless steel, just regular spring clip, and attach it to a sheath. And so when I first moved to New York, you can't carry guns in New York, and so I was like, well, shit. I got to have something. It feels weird not to have, not to be able to conceal carry. So I'm just going to carry this knife, which would have got me in just as much trouble.
Maybe more.
Yeah. But so I'm walking down the street, 6th Avenue in the middle of the village at night. Streets are packed. And I'm walking with this young lady. And I have my backpack on and my big ass Black Mamba in under my shirt, hanging down the side, so it's clipped to my belt, and the handle I can just reach up and pop the snap with my thumb, and it's a quick draw. All of a sudden I hear this clang, 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 clang. And I'm like, oh, that's a funny sound, and I just keep walking, and then some dude behind me is like, yo, bruh. He's like, is this you? And I turned around, and guess what's laying on the sidewalk? Because my Black Mamba, it had slipped around the snap and fallen out and clattered on the sidewalk, busy ass sidewalk. And man, the girl's face, she was like, oh my God. She's like, that's yours? She's like, what the fuck are you doing with that? It was pretty crazy. And luckily,
Did you say protecting you, baby?
I don't know what I said. I don't remember. I was just like, I was embarrassed as hell. And I was I looked around immediately because I was like, oh shit. Like, that was probably not a good move, and
yeah,
it wasn't a good move. Do I feel like we should all be able to protect ourselves? Yep. So was I willing to risk it? Absolutely. But it was an awkward moment. But so that's kind of a funny story. And the base of the knife, the hilt down by where the handles meet, there is still a big scuff mark from where it blasted on the concrete. And so every time I see it, it makes me think about that.
So many options for jokes in that anecdote.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm not saying anything about how your Black Mamba fell out. I'm not saying it.
My Black Mamba just fell out on the sidewalk.
Not saying it.
But
too late.
With a rattling, clattery noise.
Oh shit. Anyways,
Anywho.
Michael.
So that's one.
That's one.
Yeah, that's
Two
one.
more, pal.
You're just. I think
The
you're just
second
wasting
one.
time.
No. So let me get back to it. My second one, I've been thinking about this, and I've been having a real hard time. My second one is my my Kendrick Partisan folder, my recurve. Man, I love that thing. And Sean and I talked for a while on that one, and man, I just love that knife. So that's a forever for me. And I think that was Sean. That's the first one you did with the hidden lanyard thing, right?
Yep.
Yep.
The very first one.
Yeah, so I was super excited to get that one. So that's at the top of the list, man. And the third one, I don't know if I can answer it. I've been really trying to figure it out. I'm down to ones that for me have some sentimental value in terms of kind of the friendships I've created with some of these makers. And one of the ones that is definitely a contender. And I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying this because I'm not being specific about a third, but I'm torn between my Blood and Thunder prototype 4.0 flipper from JB.
Yep.
That was when he first kind of started coming to prominence, and he had a contest, a funny letter writing contest. You're supposed to act like a fan and write a maker.
Yes.
And I wrote some crazy shit. And I think Tyler wrote some crazy shit. So we both won that one, Tyler Holden.
That's pretty awesome.
Man, I love that knife. It's just a big beast. You know, it's not fancy at all. It's just a big, solid, badass flipper. You know, it's an older knife, but I just don't care. That thing's not ever going anywhere.
Yeah.
I think that's probably going to be it. Those three. I was torn about. I have the we call it a gentleman's folder, but we all know that it's probably not necessarily a good name for it, just because of the abuse that these knives can take. But my dude Jeremy Horton made me a super slim TAC 4 with Damascus and lightning strike carbon fiber, and it's super slim, so I take that with me whenever I'm wearing a suit. Jeremy's knives are no nonsense, and they're rugged, rough knives, but this one just has a refinement that it's just sexy, but it's still so tough at the same time. So I was really torn between those two. So it was kind of hard for me to figure out that third knife, but I think that's just gonna have to be my contender for the third position. I'll never get rid of that knife. We talked about it on the phone, and Jeremy, that's my boy, man. That's my dude. So I'm always proud to all of you people who I'm talking to right now, and the people whose knives I mentioned outside of the Black Mamba are all my personal friends, and I have knives from all of you. So I feel fortunate to be able to carry work of people who I consider friends. So it's a win-win for me, no matter what, whether it's top three or what.
That's awesome.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
I'm in the
done.
top three, so it means more to me.
Damn it.
We're never going to
Take
live this
that,
down.
bitches.
Take that, bitches.
No, you were in the top two.
Okay. Yeah,
You're right.
exactly.
Well, if you want to split hairs on it,
Well, I would. I mean, if I was
if you want to split hairs, he was
yeah.
the number one custom.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whew.
There you go.
oh, I like the way you're spinning that. Hell yeah.
That's heady.
The problem is, I'm going to get on
Now, I will say,
Heady indeed.
I'm going to get
I
on
will say
eBay
this.
and check out Black Mambas now.
I already did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did my face come up? Did my face smiling with the gold tooth come up?
I already bought them all. Just kidding.
I will say that I consider Mark Steiner a maker as well, because he's a maker of motherfuckers being jealous. This guy has some shit. So I did notice that on this list you said knives that you would like to have someday. I don't want to say unachievable, Grail, but man, that Garage 6 Playboy. Don't ever let me come up in your house. That's all I'm saying. Because you might be like, "Hey, Nick, man, you see a 6?" No, bro, I didn't even see it.
Right.
I didn't even see it. But man, that I will own one of those someday. I love those knives. The thing about it for me is that I would really want to carry it. So I want to find the right one for the right price. And that's not something that I'm in a hurry to do. Eventually that's a knife that I will. That's kind of, I think one of the questions was something in the future or something that you'd like to own. I definitely want to own one of those. I just think they're just so sexy, especially without the flipper. Just the ergos are so much nicer. The lines are so much sexier. That's just a badass knife, bro. So
They're just clean.
Super clean. And I don't know how to pronounce it. I guess it's Loxa. I've always wanted one of those. I have wanted one of those. I've always wanted to get one. And again, it's something that I want to use. So eventually I'll make that move. You know, right now, if I'm up in the mountains, for the most part, I got a Strider SMF on me or something that just can take a licking and you know, for a folder. And then I just have, you know, I have a fixed blade in my pack and one on my chest rig. So I just kind of do it like that.
Nice. Well, you get a third one. What's your third wish list? So Garage 6, Loxa. What's your third wish list knife?
Man, I really didn't think this one out. I could waste a whole bunch of time just trying to think about it. I didn't do my homework on that one. I didn't do my homework. I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know if I can.
No, it's all right. We're not going to put you on. We're not going to force your hand.
Yeah, probably man. I don't think I can answer that. I hate to be a party pooper on that one. There's so many different knives that I would like to get someday.
It's harder than
that's a tough question.
when we did that. That was a tough one to do.
Yeah. There's so many, you know, I'm a fan, bro. So I like so many different knives. It's hard to kind of lock down. Did you guys actually have like unachievable grails? Was there actually a knife that you said that was unachievable for you?
Well, Mark actually talked about breaking in the Smithsonian and stealing the, you know, one of the moon knives, but I think that's pretty achievable, right?
Whose car are we taking?
Oh, totally.
We could do
one
that.
of the Randall Astros that went to space.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, see, so those Randalls are amazing, you know, but that's, you know, if you have time and patience and you know, time to do some searching, you know, we can find those, just not what you're talking about. But man, that's a tough question for me to answer. I don't know if I can come up with
we ain't got to search to find the one he's talking about.
Yeah.
We know exactly where it is.
Somebody just needs to unpussify themselves and get this program, and we make this shit happen.
Right.
That's right.
Somebody needs to actually demonstrate some of that ambition he's always preaching to some other motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm.
We just need the ocean for this son of a bitch.
And who's to say I haven't hired a private investigator to start tailing Schwarzenegger around his office? Huh?
There you go.
Hey, look, I'll be a decoy. I'll be a one functional button Black Mamba decoy. I'll attract some attention. Y'all go handle the dirty work. You know, we get caught. We're all going in the same hole.
Yeah.
How do you know it's not? How do you know it's the real one still?
Good point.
Who knows?
Well, we don't know till we've stole it. So
That's right.
Steal some shit.
Get it.
Yeah.
Still a great ass story if you steal the wrong one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly.
All right. Well, it's been a very enjoyable conversation, Nick. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Oh yeah, man. Thank you.
I had one more question.
Whoa.
Oh, what you
More
got?
questions?
What you got, player?
Just one.
All right. Fire away.
You got any cool stories from having to use a knife while on tour?
No. I've never used. I have to be really careful, especially when I'm traveling overseas.
I figure
other countries don't. They don't share a love of people bringing knives into the country. So I have to be super careful about what I take. I usually take some production something. I always have something with me, but I don't take anything that I'm not, if it, you know, there's a high chance that it would get confiscated. Yeah.
Nothing you can't throw in the gutter.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of you guys might remember, I don't know if you recall, my wife got detained in London for having a Kubotan on her keychain. And they detained her at the airport and were talking about not letting her come home. And that's just a little plastic stick, you know, and they went crazy. So, you know, I'm really careful about, you know, around the States, you know, that's no big deal. I'll carry a little something, but I've never, quite honestly, the most I've ever had to use a knife when on tour is to just quickly fix some gear if something's not right. If a spring clip gets stuck on a stand, or if a key gets stuck, or if I drop something down in a key on a keyboard or a piano, those are the times that I've had to, you know, whip out a knife real quick. If I couldn't get a case open, pop open a case or something, an instrument case. Very mundane, you know, unexciting shit. You know.
No, here's what actually happened. you're playing piano.
Oh, shit.
One of Aretha's, fans
Here we go.
got a little overzealous.
Here we go.
Rushed the stage, whipped out your Kendrick, threw it across the stage, and stabbed him right in the heart.
Caught him in the cranium. No. No, let me tell you, Aretha, she would have handled her own stuff, and her security had firearms, so I wouldn't even have to pull shit out. Do you know what I'm saying?
There you go.
Those guys were on the ball.
I bet so.
Nobody fucks with the boss lady.
It's a good story.
I'll tell you what, though. I'll tell you something. It's kind of off the topic, but I watched Aretha one time take a stack of $100 bills that was probably maybe an inch and a half high. I don't know how many hundreds that is, and I watched her throw that shit out into the crowd. And man, if you want to talk about a frenzy, they were already frenzied off seeing the queen do her shit, but then she threw a whole stack of crispy $100 bills into the crowd. I saw security guards say, "Fuck this," and reach up on stage and snatch some stuff. So, that story doesn't have anything to do with anything except you just talked about Aretha, and it made me think about that. She just took a stack of hundreds and just tossed it up into the air. I was like, wow, that must be nice to be able to do that and not give a fuck.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's a solid 10K right there.
I don't know what it was. Like I said, it was probably an inch and a half. I mean, she just had a stack and she just went pew, and just tossed it. And we all looked at everybody on stage. All of our mouths just dropped open. We're like, for real? Yeah.
Damn.
I got one last question for you.
Please.
Favorite pistol round?
Oh, you already know that answer, man. Why are you asking?
I know. Because I want to hear it.
10 millimeter. 10 millimeter all day. I love the 10 millimeter. I got hot rounds. I got rounds that are more like a tame 40, but man, I love 10 millimeter. I carry a Glock 29 in my chest rig, and I have a Glock 20 extra mag on the outside. Man, I just feel like that's one of the best all around pistol rounds you can use. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, they're making some amazing 9mm plus P stuff, but I feel a lot more confident with a nice heavy 10 mil. I feel a lot more confident,
especially out in the woods.
With that. Yep.
Yeah.
It's overkill for 2 legs, but for 4 legs, boy, that's gonna God forbid I should ever have to get in that situation, but it sure does make me feel good.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Which I meant to ask you, how do you like that little what's that? A 6-shot, that Ruger, that 10 mil pistol?
Yeah. Dude, it's awesome.
That? That's weird.
It's a Ruger GP 100, and it is as good as any Smith & Wesson I've ever had, which is saying something because I'm a Smith guy, and it's damn good.
Wow. What is it? What's the barrel length on that?
3 inches.
So it's a thumper? How does it handle?
I haven't shot it yet. I just got it. So the place I used to shoot, the guy fenced it off and he's got cows on it now. So I got to go to the indoor range, which sucks. But
I saw you post that up. I was like, that's interesting. That is a 10 mil revolver. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I can run 40 in it also because it's moon clips, right? So pretty neat gun. It's got a Novak rear sight on it, and yeah, I'm highly impressed.
Yeah, I'm
very cool.
I'm intrigued. Yeah, fellas,
awesome.
This was fun. I definitely appreciate the invite. This was a good time.
Yeah, you got any questions for us, Nick?
Well, I was going to ask, but it kind of seemed like maybe we might be running out of time. But I was going to ask you guys what your round of choice was, but I don't know if we want to get off into that.
Oh, you know what mine is.
I know, Tom. I know we're kind of birds of a feather on that one, right?
Yeah.
What about the rest of you ingrates?
Like 10 millimeter sucks.
Next,
this would go if this was online. Couldn't kill anything with 10 millimeter.
Right. It's overkill.
Right.
Yeah. It's overkill, but you couldn't kill anyone with it.
I truthfully don't have a favorite, really.
I love them. I love them all.
I really, what do I like to shoot? I like to shoot 45. What do I carry? I carry a 9, but from doing the competitive pistol thing .45 is just a joy to shoot, right? It's smooth. It's got plenty of punch, big old projectile. You can't stack as many in, so that's why I carry a 9. But
Right.
what do I like to shoot? I like to shoot .45.
Yeah. Jonathan?
Yeah, man, I like 9mm at this point in my life. It's readily available. It's fairly cheap for practice. You can get good quality defensive rounds, and there's a plethora of guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm carrying a 9 too.
Yeah.
That's what I carry.
Glock 48.
I like shooting the 22 with subsonics and a silencer because that's a lot of damn
That's
fun.
so fun.
That is
Damn straight.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I carry a Glock 19, so I carry a 9mm as well. Just when I'm not in the mountains, that's my everyday carry. I'm just curious, have you guys checked out that the Liberty ammunition civil defense, the 50 grain 2000 FPS out of the muzzle? Have you seen that? Have you seen that?
No.
So they're 9mm plus P, and they're only 50 grain or 55 grain. I'd have to go get a box and look at it, but they're light as hell. So, Glock 19 with 15 plus 1 plus the extra mag. I mean, that shit is so light, and it hits light, but it's so fast. The minute you pull the trigger, it's like ping. I mean, you hit the steel immediately at 15 to 20 yards. I mean, it flies crazy fast, and it's a pleasure to carry because it's so light. I hand that gun.
Any feet issues?
No, not really. I mean, I've gone 3-4 boxes through it, and no more difference than anything else. It's basically like a little mini rifle round,
Right.
And it hits noticeably lighter, so you wouldn't use that up in the mountains, of course. But for a defensive round, man, it's a blazer, and it's super nice to carry. Super nice to carry because it's a lightweight package.
Very cool.
Nice.
All right, boys.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's probably about time to wrap things up. This one ran a little bit on the longer side, but that's cool. It was a very good conversation. So,
all right.
Well, everybody's wanting us to go shorter, so.
Yeah, right. So we'll just stretch it out a little bit.
Take that.
That'll show them.
I'd say just edit me out, and it'll edit me out, and it'll be good.
Okay, so we got a couple things we got to touch on here at the end of the episode. Our Patreon support crew keeps growing, and that's fantastic. So high five to everybody.
Guys.
Our most recent guy to join us is Joe Castle, aka Cubby. Some of you guys know Joe.
Yeah.
I've mentioned him a few times.
Hey, Joe,
big dog, what's up?
High five to Joe for helping us out and supporting the show. We really appreciate you, man. So that's been going very well. We got really fantastic response. I mentioned this earlier to our episode 33 knife collection episode. We asked people to chime in and post their own picks for, the 3 that you'd keep and the 3 that you'd get, that you'd choose if you could pick any knife from anywhere for any cost. And we've got really good responses on that on Instagram, but we've had fantastic responses on that in our Facebook group. So I say it all the time, but if you're not in the Facebook group, please come join us there because there's lots of good conversation about the topics that we cover. Sometimes some very interesting tangential conversations about topics that we cover. And in this case, people have shared some very, very cool knives, some with awesome and interesting sentimental value to them. And we've heard some great stories from listeners about knives that they would keep, and some really fantastic choices. So thanks to everybody for sharing those with us. It's when we did that episode, we were hoping for a lot of interactivity after the fact, and that's very much been the case. So thanks everybody for joining in.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. I've had a great time seeing everybody's knives.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention, the folks from Knife Magazine, I posted about this in the Facebook group and maybe on Instagram as well. The folks from Knife Magazine mentioned us recently on their website. So high five to Knife Magazine. Appreciate you guys commenting on the show. This is a magazine that was formerly known as Knife World for like 40 years, 1975 to 2015. We link to the Knife World website from the Mark of the Maker website. And the reason we link there is if you pull up the reference post on the website, we link to where all these books are. Many, not all, but many of the books that we talk about on the show are available through their website. So Clay from Knife Magazine gave us access to their archive of Knife World magazines, going back, like I said, 40 plus years, which is super, super cool. And it'll be really handy for us coming into future history episodes for doing research. So thank you to Knife Magazine for giving us a hand.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Yes, very much. I'm excited.
It's absolutely dizzying, man. I dug around in there the other night and it was, it's crazy. But as soon as it's like, it's one of those bottomless black hole corners of the internet where you start digging in and it's like, oh, well, I got to find, oh yeah, there's that. Oh my gosh, there's this other thing. And it just never stops. One of the really cool things that's over on their website, we'll post a link to it in the Facebook group, is they have this article about the, another one of the space knives. And we mentioned this, I think, during the Randall episode when we were talking about the Astro. Case made a knife that went on like 11 trips on an Apollo mission. And so there's a Case machete, a survival machete, that is a very historic space knife. And so there's a really cool article on the free side of their website. So we'll post a link to it so you can go read the article. It's very, very interesting. Over on the Knife Magazine website. So we'll post it and you should go check it out. If you love Randall Astro and the NASA related history of that knife, you'll really enjoy reading about this Case survival machete that was included on, what did I say, 9 or 11 different missions or something. So really cool stuff.
I like to think of it as the moonsheddy.
The moonsheddy. I like that. Well done. Nick, thanks again. We appreciate you. You did some fun read-ins for us in the past, and we really enjoyed having a conversation with you here tonight on the show. And thanks for joining us.
All right,
thanks,
fellas.
man.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, bud. Great
Thanks
talk.
for having me.
Fun conversation.
It was, man. I appreciate you guys.
Okay, well, we have one last item to touch on, and unfortunately, it's on a bit of a down note. We've had some unfortunate news, kind of a string of them here over the last couple of months of losses here within the knife community. And Sean's going to talk to us about a couple of recent ones that we wanted to make sure to note.
Well, firstly, we lost Chuck Marshall. A lot of our listeners know Chuck. I've personally done several deals with Chuck over the years. He was a collector's collector, really loved knives, and just an all-around good dude. Chuck was a father, a husband, and a brother, and he'll be sadly missed in the community.
Absolutely.
And we also lost Sam Johnson. Sam was a knife maker. He was legitimately the most naturally talented knife maker I've ever met. And I hate to see that he's passed. He had so much potential and a life cut short so young. It's just sad. All of my condolences to his parents. And
yeah, just a great young talent lost, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, really, that one really knocked me for a loop. I was not ready for that. I knew Sam. He was my friend. And yeah, it's just shitty.
Yeah. So rest in peace, Sam. Rest in peace, Chuck. We'll keep your families in our thoughts. And we'll just wrap this one up with a moment of silence for both Chuck and Sam. To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.